border in Canada.
Always great when IMSA comes back to Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. This renowned circuit has been a fixture on the IMSA calendar for decades.
Wild action. We talk about this racetrack total commitment. High cornering speeds, Cal, high closing speeds. The drivers will tell you it makes you kind of hold your breath.
Legendary racetracks get that reputation because they demand commitment, precision, and determination.
With 130 mile an hour plus average speed, this is the fastest circuit on the IMSA WeatherTech SportsCar calendar.
Well, we said it's intense. This championship season is just really ramping up.
This is the meat of the season now, and this is where championships can be won and lost.
Are you ready?
The world's best sports car races from Canadian Tire Motorsport Park.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to round 7. Well, round 7 for some of the classes. It's round 4 for LMP2, who are at the front of the grid this weekend. 13 LMP2 cars that will be disputing the front of the field for the Chevrolet Grand Prix and the IMSA WeatherTech SportsCar Championship. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm John Hindorf in the Ford Performance Global Broadcast Centre. Ryan Marine alongside me on what has turned out to be a beautiful summer's day just outside of Bowmanville, Ontario. Yeah, north of the border for Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, a brilliantly old school racetrack. The infrastructure's been updated, the buildings, the connectivity, all absolutely top quality, but the track has changed virtually not at all since 1961 when it opened, and it's played host to pretty much every top class series on 4 wheels and indeed on 2 wheels, right up to Formula 1 and World Championship motorcycling as well. Today it's the turn of the sports cars, and 34 of the IMSA WeatherTech SportsCar Championship contenders are out on the circuit, with 10 GTD Pros adding to those 11 LMP2s. And the GTDs, same cars, different driver makeup, well, they're in the mix as well. 13 of those. If you've been looking online and seeing the entry list, you'll think, kind of, you can't count. There were actually 12 of the LMP2s. Yes, unfortunately, JDC Miller Motorsports Oregon LMP207 with the Gibson engine, and that car has not made the start of the race. They've been having 1 or 2 teething issues, let's say, with that car this weekend, and they've decided to take the time to take that car out of the race and not risk spoiling everyone else's race. AO Racing and PJ Hyatt will come round to the start on pole position with United Autosports' Dan Goldberg, championship leader in LMP2, next to him on the outside of the front row, the left-hand side as they come across the start-finish line. Then it's TDS, Inter-Europol competition, CrowdStrike and Pratt Miller Motorsport for the top 6, whilst in GTD Pro, Paul Miller Racing and BMW have captured pole position ahead of Vassar Sullivan Racing's Lexa, and then the 2 Corvettes in the front 2 rows. In GTD, Vassar Sullivan again, same type of car, different driver lineup, gets the green back plates, the number 12 car on pole from championship leaders Winward Racing in the AMG, and then it's Chevrolet, Corvette, Aston Martin, Lamborghini, BMW, Porsche and Ferrari. 8 different manufacturers in just around half a second, making up the first 8 in GTD. This circuit, 2.5 miles, 10 corners. How does it stack up in terms of the braking and retardation? It's a quick circuit. It is the quickest in terms of average times and average speeds. Our Brembo brake facts tell us, at least our Brembo brake engineers say, that this is the easiest of ratings. 1 out of 5. Toughest braking point, unsurprisingly, going into Moss Corner at turn 5A and 5B. Just 5 times on the anchors around the lap. This is a momentum circuit for all of these cars, and particularly the LMP2s. It is a 95 miles an hour deceleration coming down the hill to the bottom of turn number 4, but the braking is helped by the fact you're going up the hill in the GTDs and everyone else to turn number 5. It's still 2.2 G's deceleration for those GT cars. Ryan Marine alongside me, John Hindorf, 2x2, coming round. Our eyes and ears in the pits is Arjuna Kankapati. We'll hear from him in a little while. The 11 cars at the front of the grid then, and it's a beautiful sight. Slightly overcast, temperature 27 Celsius, that's 81 Fahrenheit on the track and in the air. Perfect 2x2 start, green flag in the air, and the 2 hours and 40 starts right now, and PJ Hyatt jumps off into the lead, down into the first right-handed corner. We're waiting for the GTD Pros, split start here. Pros will always be ahead of the arms. Now this could be more interesting because there's some very fast cars with those green number panels. They would have been in 3rd and 4th position after qualifying. It's a very clean start from the GTDs as well. Leaders already on the far side of the circuit, heading down towards turn number 4 as there's side-by-side action. The 48 BMW and the number 4 Corvette right there disputing 4th and 5th. Tommy Milner and Dan Harper. Milner in the GM product, Paul Miller in the Munich-based manufacturer's machine, and it's his teammate Neil Verhagen who is ahead at the moment. 2 feisty starts, Ryan Marine, but 2 clean starts, and we're underway at the Chevrolet Grand Prix.
That's what we wanted to see. We wanted to get this race underway nice and clean and then let it settle into its rhythm. Really good job from pole by PJ Hyatt, who was on pole here last year and was penalized coming to the green for changing columns too soon. No such mistakes here today, and he's able to consolidate that lead over the championship leader, Dan Goldberg, to the tune of 0.8 of a second after the first lap.
More side-by-side action in GTD as the Faf Lamborghini goes past the Corvette. Dan Harper then. Oh, there's a touch right in that area of the grid. There was side-by-side action. The car from 8th position in GTD has gone around, and that is the Triazi Competition Ferrari, the 021 car. And that has already dropped down. I think the car alongside was the number 45, which would make it Danny Formal and Onofrio Triazi, who came together in the Lamborghini and the Ferrari 296. Yeah, that was early in the corner, and it looked to me as though the Ferrari, the Triazi Ferrari with Onofrio behind the wheel, just got a little bit too much curb on the apex of turn number 9. That pitched him to the right, and unfortunately Danny Formal was there. They have continued. We stay green, Ryan.
A bit too much of that for Formal and company this year. They just haven't had the best of luck, have they? And for Onofrio Triazi, actually looking at it again, Triazi was down there along the curb, and Formal did seem to kind of come down to him from the onboard shot we just got on board the Ferrari. So that's an interesting one for race control to try and adjudicate. But that said, Onofrio Triazi was not really supposed to be in this car. He had been in the sister car, which had primarily been doing the endurance races. Kenton Cook ended up drafted in alongside Kenton's full-time ride. For whatever reason, not on the grid here this weekend, the Kordov competition team, and so Kenton thrown a lifeline, jumping aboard the Triazi car alongside Onofrio Triazi, part of the family that runs that team, and it's a lot for Kenton to try and learn here. Brand new chassis to him here this weekend.
If I know anything about Kenton Cook, it could be a shopping cart, to be honest, and he could have been asked to drive it 10 minutes ago, and his answer's always going to be yes, and he's always going to be one of those plug-and-play performance upgrades. He has a real innate skill for driving quickly in any kind of race cars. At IMSA Radio, if you want to get in touch, at the front of the field in the LMP category, LMP2 category, Gar Robinson and Phil Fair battling for 8th and 9th position. And the blue and red number 74, it's the Riley operated car, goes through turn 1 following the green car through. And as they continue down, PJ Hyatt has pulled out 1.1 seconds. All of the cars in LMP2, all of the prototype cars are Orica LMP207s with the Gibson engine. It's not mandated to be a single chassis class, although Gibson are the current and will be the new future Solus engine supplier for LMP2. It has turned out that way. Ultimately, someone builds a better mousetrap. Into the pit lane And this is a drive-through penalty, incident responsibility, and that's the Triarsi Competizione car coming through. Now, we talked about this in our Michelin Countdown to Green. Penalties here take about 22, 23 seconds to come down the pit lane, but you lose a bit more than that because you're not going at racing speed, and that is the lead lap to the P2 cars that has been given up now by the Triarsi Competizione Ferrari, but he's still on the end of the lead lap for the GT cars, but it's a long way back already for that 021 car, Ryan.
Yeah, as we talked about in the Countdown to Green, really difficult to overcome the penalties here on pure pace. Now they're going to need to start thinking about strategy as a way to get some of the lost track position back, and they might almost certainly will need some yellow to help them out. They are now well behind the rest of the field, having dropped behind the LMP2s, and they are quite a bit adrift to the rest of the GT field. So that is a tough way to get this race started for the Triarsi team.
Hello to the IMSA fan Discord and everybody in the RWEC as well, who I'm sure will be splitting their attention at the moment. To the High Five crew, Christina and Les cheering on the boys in plaid. Faf Motorsport, the brilliantly monikered Lamborghini with that Lumberjacks shirt. Well done for that one. And we are racing then with still 2.5 hours to go, and PJ Hyatt with a 1.8 second lead. It's disappearing into the distance at the moment in GTD Pro. Neil Verhagen for Paul Miller Racing from pole has still the Lexus in second position. GTD, Jack Hawksworth with Russell Ward still, so it stayed pretty much as you were from the grid, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Already a track limits warning. That's early, that's very early in the race, and that's come in for Robert Wiggins in the DXDT Chevy Corvette. Turns 1 and 2, the main spots that race control are monitoring, although they'll be looking at other places as well, Ryan, but that was what was said in the driver briefings.
Exactly, and reiterated to us in the competition meeting. Thanks to IMSA for making Bo Barfield, Paul Walter, and some of the other folks available to us in the media to help understand some of the talking points on a given weekend. One change here from a year ago was in turn 1, which sees a little extra paint there on the other side of the curb at the exit of the corner, and that effectively is inbound, so that changes slightly the way that that corner is policed from a track limits perspective, and it basically opens that corner up a little bit, which may have contributed to some of the faster speeds that we're seeing here this weekend, one year to the next.
Good start, clean start to the Chevrolet Grand Prix here at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. Let's take a driver's eye view, not in the car at the start. That's a difficult thing to do. Arjuna, where are you on the pit lane?
Be quite impressed if Tom Dillman could have a chat with me, but while piloting his LMP2 car around the Canadian Tire Motorsports Park. But Tom, Jeremy Clark's been a revelation in LMP2. How are you feeling here at Canadian Tire Motorsports Park as the pairing behind this Inter Europol number 43?
Yeah, obviously last year went very well, and for Jeremy it was the first time on this track on Friday. We didn't do any testing compared to the other cars, so he's doing a really, really good job. Being P4, considering that, it's very strong. So yeah, now the goal for him will be to bring the car in a strong position, in the top 5 or top 3 if possible, and then we will see what we can do.
You obviously won this race last year. Have you felt the tracks change much at all when you were going around it?
No, it's exactly the same. Really enjoyable in an LMP2 car. A lot of fun around those high-speed corners, so I look forward to take the win.
One thing you said on Monday in our press conference is that you jump into the simulator sometimes to understand the difference between the LMP2 car here in IMSA and then across the pond in ELMS. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, I have my own sim, and I have been using it since many years now, just to prepare myself before every weekend. In LMP2, the teams don't necessarily have a simulator, so I have my own one. And yeah, between Le Mans, Imola, now Mosport, I just refresh. You know, it's different power, different grip, different gear ratios. So yeah, just to refresh and be ready for FP1.
Thank you very much.
That's a good point, actually. LMP2 is a global formula, but here at IMSA we race with slightly more power than they do in the European Le Mans series. Although at Le Mans, at Le Mans, although in the European Le Mans series it's very similar. Slightly different choices in final drive ratios and gear ratios and the aero packages as well, but it's the same basic car and engine, but it does make a difference. So Tom Dillman there giving us a great insight into what a pro driver has to be doing. Now here's the first danger point for our leader PJ Hyatt, because he's already beginning to catch up, Ryan, with the back of the GTD field, and that's a set of quick cars, as we said in Mission Countdown at Green on IMSA Radio if you weren't with us before we came live on the international feed. The top speeds of these GTD cars and the LMP2s are not that different.
No, they're not, and it makes for some interesting interactions between the classes over the course of a race, and perhaps a bit more fraught as the race progresses and we get closer to the end. A pass that might be straightforward, or a GT driver is willing to cut a little bit of slack to the faster prototype coming through in the first hour. The situation might not quite be the same towards the end, but you're right, PJ now very much mired in that traffic, and that could cause opportunities for others. It can open up opportunities in some of these GT battles as well. It's a big part of what dictates outcomes in these multi-class races right here at CTMP.
Problem for the number 2 United Autosports car, and that is Phil Fair, his first outing with the team. He's had a spin at a very high-speed portion of the circuit going downhill into Clayton Corner, the second corner here on this 3.5 or 3.9 kilometre, 2.5 mile track. I think he's got away with it. I don't think there's any damage on that red, white and blue Orica. He will have dropped a little bit of track position. Meantime, in GTD Pro, Neil Verhagen has pulled out a 1.7 gap back to Aaron Thielitz, and the Chevy Corvette Dan Harper's come up and split. No, actually, it's Antonio Garcia who's moved up, isn't it? He's gone up ahead of the Paul Miller Racing car. They've followed through. Sebring up to 5th. Tommy Milner is the car that's dropped out. Oh, no, he did hit the wall. I apologise. Left front and left rear, and he's dislodged the rear deck on that Orica. I think the left-hand clip just in front of the left rear wheel has popped on that car. The team will be looking at that very carefully. It's the wrong side for them to see from the pit wall, and actually being on the pit wall here is rather frowned upon. Tend to do everything from the pit box, so they may be talking to Phil Fair there in that car. That's a very high-speed part of the track, and Ryan is fairly fortunate who got away with that side swipe there on the wall.
Agreed, and he comes in with limited experience too. One of 2 drivers debuting in the WeatherTech Championship in the LMP2 class here this weekend. Phil is from Canada, comes from Canadian touring car racing background, did some racing in the old Toyota Atlantic Series as well back in the early 2000s before turning his focus to the business world. So he does have a racing background, has driven some pretty high performance, high downforce cars. But the big difference from an Atlantic car to this, in Atlantic races, you're racing only other open-wheel Atlantic cars, right? Not multi-class, and it looked to me like he was in the middle of trying to put a pass on one of the GT cars, which changes your line, it changes your trajectory. You might be running on a piece of asphalt you've never run on before, especially with the limited experience that he has. And whatever the cause, something caught him out because he had that spin. Very nearly got away with it entirely, but as you say, quite lucky to get away with a relatively glancing blow to the left-hand side.
It's Ryan Marine, who's alongside me, John Heindorf, in the Ford Performance Global Broadcast Centre. Junior Kangapati is the voice you'll hear down in the pit lane. Well, we are off and running. Good start to this race. The leaders already coming through the sharp end of the field in GTD and GTD Pro. Top three have already passed Jack Hawksworth in the Vassar Sullivan that leads in GTD. And this provides some opportunities, a little fumble here or there as the LMPs come through, and this is why we absolutely adore multi-class racing. Elliott Skier with two prototypes on his right-hand side in that green and yellow Porsche has to give way. Through goes Nick Poole in the light blue, number 52 of PR1 Matheson Racing, and he's followed through by Travis Hill in the Era car, another driver drafted in this weekend. Ryan DL's had a variety of co-drivers this year, and the last two weekends both been with a Hill. Travis here this weekend, and last weekend he was in a Ferrari for a 12-hour race at Paul Ricard with BTCC current champion Jake Hill, who's making his way in the endurance GT world, and he's taken to that like a duck to water as well. Wonder when we will see Jake over here in the IMSA WeatherTech SportsCar Championship with Era.
I think, though, John, that might have been, I'm sure he would too. I think that was Chris Cumming, though, that Nick actually got around using some of that traffic.
My apologies.
Yeah,
you're
Travis
right.
is doing a nice job, not too far behind, but Chris was trying to use the traffic to his advantage. It looked like he was trying to make it 3 wide, and that then he didn't quite pull the move off and got stuck behind the Porsche. That opened up the door around the outside, and Nick, very opportunistic. Of course, the winner here last year with Inter Europol didn't need a second invitation. He made it work around the outside, grabbed that spot away, and immediately started reeling in George Kurtz, fighting for now the 5th spot. So really strong start here for Nick, who was a very late call-up. Only got to the track really in the wee hours of the morning ahead of practice on Friday because this deal came together so late, but making the most of it.
An experienced hand. Nick Poole, winner of the invitation to Le Mans. TDS has gone around, coming out of turn number 9 and facing the rest of the field. And Stephen Thomas in that number 11 car. He was the starting driver, and he's got somehow to get that car turned around. He does a flick turn in the runoff at turn 9. Remember, that was gravel and grass. Wouldn't have been able to do that. Comes on in front of Jensen Holtzman in the Gradient Ford Mustang. Well, that was the 3rd place car at the time, and that elevates George Kurtz now up to 3rd. George starting in 5th position, and now up to 3rd. PJ leading by 8 seconds. It's been a brilliant drive early on for PJ Hyatt through the traffic. Daniel Goldberg in 2nd, and now George Kurtz in 3rd position. Let's pick up some more news from the pit lane at Wright Motorsports. The number 120 Porsche, the green and yellow car, has Elliott Skier driving it at the moment. There in 4th, here's his teammate Adam Adelson.
And team owner Adam Adelson as well. And we were just having a conversation about the fact that you're racing not just in the IMSA WeatherTech SportsCar Championship this weekend, but also in the VP SportsCar Championship in what is a Porsche 911. Is there much that you can gain from being in the same car effectively across of all these race sessions?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you just get double the sessions effectively, almost double the track time, and you know, anywhere you go, no matter how much experience you have, that's always super, super valuable. You know, the cars are definitely a bit different. Every chassis from every manufacturer is not exactly, you know, the same as the next. So you have to do different things to try and get the cars to feel exactly the same, but Wright Motorsports have been doing an incredible job with the car, and I'm just a little sad that we didn't get to race in VP this morning. There's no better car to be in than a Porsche 911 in the rain, and you know, so yeah.
In terms of this track, this was the one race that you skipped last year in 2024. What's it been like to be north of the border at such a historic track?
Yeah, you know, I raced here in 2023 in VP Challenge as well. You know, last year we didn't race here just because we didn't plan on doing a full IMSA season. We weren't really championship oriented. We were just planning on doing a few sprint races here and there, and it turned into almost a full season. But It's amazing to be able to race internationally, even if it's just our northern neighbors. And you know, this is such a cool historic track, super high speed, high commitment, and it's just it's really a pleasure to drive.
Thanks, best of luck when you jump in the car.
Thank you.
So that's big gap that's opened up in the front of the field now, 12 seconds, partially down to Daniel Goldberg and Stephen Thomas coming together as they were coming through the final corner, and that is being looked at by race control. So it wasn't just Stephen spinning on his own. That is quite unusual. He's a very safe pair of hands. Seems there was contact. Race control have seen it and they are looking at it. The good news for Stephen Thomas is he's running again. The bad news, he's dropped some 40 seconds or thereabouts to the battle that he was in at the front of the field. The great news, Ryan, for PJ Hyatt is he's got a huge lead now at the front of the field. He's already gone through past the start-finish line, and I'm waiting for Dan Goldberg to come through in second place. It's 11.5 seconds now at the front of the field.
Yeah, massive. So while those two were having their moment, PJ's been playing in fast laps. He just did the race's fastest lap 2 laps ago, and that's helped him to build that gap. Now, race control has seen that incident, and they have ruled on it. No action taken. We have not seen it, so we can't really provide a whole lot of insight into what happened except for the outcome, which was Stephen Thomas going for a spin. But race control's got all the angles, they've seen it, and no action taken for either Dan Goldberg or Stephen Thomas.
So as my Aussie friends would say, it's a play on, and we continue. I suspect that Stephen Thomas will be mildly seething, because if you've got an incident that involves multiple racing car drivers, the general rule is however many drivers are involved, add one for the amount of different perspectives that you'll get about the incident itself. 2 hours and 18 minutes still to go, 21.5 gone. And at the front of the field, PJ Hyatt then leading. Let's have a look at the classes. Neil Verhagen by 1.6 seconds over Aaron Thielitz. Antonio Garcia as well in third position. And in GTD, Jack Hawksworth has converted his pole position and just put his fastest lap in the Vassar Sullivan racing machine. And there's been further contact with the number 11 TDS racing car cutting across the front of the Wright Motorsport number 120. Just a little bit too close there. It looked to me as though the 120 had given Alain Skier had given the prototype room on the inside coming over the top of Quebec corner turn 3, and just a little nudge left rear of the prototype to right front of the Porsche. That's dislodged that whole front clip on the dark green Porsche, and that's not going to reattach itself. It's going to, is it going to stay where it's supposed to, Ryan? That might mean an unscheduled pit stop for that Wright Motorsport 120, sitting in 4th at the moment in its class.
And I suspect that too will get a look from the stewards, just because that has the potential to really affect the Porsche. Right now we're getting a look at it coming at us head on down the Mario Andretti straight, and it does seem like it's okay, but that car under some pressure right now. Robert Wickens drawing a bead on Elliott Skier in the battle for 4th and 5th, John.
And amazingly enough, that front end has stayed on, and more amazingly, Robert Wiggins goes round the outside, but he's got in the grey and he's had to give up a position. So whilst he was challenging, and this is the problem with such close racing, he is challenging to take over position number 4, and Casper Stevenson in the heart of racing Vantage goes through and takes 5th. And Tower Motorsports have had an incident. John Ferrano in that orange and white car, and that again is at the action area of turn 9. That's coming out of turn 9, and I think he's done a swapper as well. The problem is the front of the car, the left-hand side, is right up against the concrete wall, and I don't think he can get enough steering lock on that car to pull it out forwards. Now, I'll tell you now, finding reverse on a racing car is not necessarily the easiest thing to do, and there may have been contact there with the leader, PJ Hyatt, coming to put the lap on that tower number 8, and was very close from the angle that we've just seen here in the Ford Performance Global Broadcast Centre. Impossible to say, but I'm sure Race Control will be looking at that one as well. My goodness, they've been busy in the first 25 minutes of this race. Oh, tough. I can't tell from that angle. There's no damage to either car. If this was the cricket that I've been watching for most of the day, I would need the snicko on that one to see if there'd been some kind of impact. Both cars have continued. We stay green. 25 minutes gone. Let's take our first in-race update with VP. In GTD, Vassar Sullivan Racing from pole leads Jack Hawksworth in the number 12. Lexus from Russell Ward in second, the championship leading number 57 Mercedes, and Turner Motorsport now in third, ahead of that great battle with Elliott Skeer, Casper Stevenson and Robert Wiggins making up the top 6 for respectively Wright Motorsport, Porsche, Haas Racing, Vantage and DXDT Chevrolet. In GTD Pro, again, it's the pole sitter, Paul Miller Racing and Neil Verhagen up into 11th overall, and he's got a couple of LMP2s, no, one LMP2 between himself and the rest of the field. It's Aaron Thielitz in second, who's just come through for Lexus in GTD Pro, then Corvette number 3 for Tonio Garcia, Dan Harper for Paul Miller Racing, Seb Prio in 5th, and Andrea Caldarelli for Pfaff Motorsport. As into the pit lane has come the number 11 of Stephen Thomas. That looks like it might have been mildly scheduled here. They're 26 minutes in, and it looked like a long service, certainly 2 Michelin tyres. It'll drop them down to the back of LMP2. Actually, that's where they already were. At the front of the field, PJ Hyatt leads by nearly 14 seconds. Dan Goldberg for United Autosports in second, so 99 from 22. Then the 04, the black and red car of George Kurtz, the CrowdStrike Racing by Algarve Pro Racing. PR1 Matheson Motorsport, Nick Bull in the 52 in 4th. 5th, Jeremy Clark doing a great job for the yellow and green in the Europol competition, number 43. And Chris Cumming for Pratt Miller, the 73 in 6th. That is our first VP in race update. Let's get straight down to the pit lane and find out what that pit stop was about for TTS. And here's Arjuna.
Just caught up with the engineer as the car peeled away from the lane, and it was top off the fuel and put some tires on, John, to get the car to the end of the drive time window. So my expectation is the next time that TDS number 11 rolls its way into the lane, Hunter McElroy will jump behind the wheel of the Orica.
Well, they haven't given up any position in terms of where they are in LMP2, but they have dropped off the lead lap. This is what we said in our Porsche Keys to the Race. Sometimes you have to be flexible, you have to be creative. They are waiting to get Hunter McElroy back in that car. He's the faster of the 2 drivers, and they'll do that at the, I presume, at the first possible opportunity when the drive time is up for Stephen Thomas, Ryan, and they're giving Stephen Thomas the best possible opportunity now with a brand new set of Michelin tyres and a full tank of VP Racing fuel.
Yeah, that's right. So again, the thing to remember, LMP2 minimum drive time is 60 minutes. That's 1 hour. These cars can't go the full hour on a tank of fuel, and so you got to square that circle somehow strategically, and what they're electing to do here is get the stop done here. Now this car can get to the hour mark and make its next stop more or less on that hour mark and get McElroy in to maximize his drive time. Some of the other cars that don't want to give up track position, they don't want to risk falling off the lead lap, they're going to be hesitant to do something like this, which might mean their bronze driver ends up doing some additional driving. So what TDS is probably hoping for here is in that event that McElroy's additional time in the car then could help them make up ground relative to the rest of the class.
Never ceases to amaze me, and I've been doing this for a very, very long time in watching sports cars, a multicast sports car racing, but it never ceases to amaze me how much work and calculation, strategizing is going on behind the scenes, Ryan. We always talk about the talent behind the wheel, but there's just as much going on the wall and the pit box as well. The drivers have to make those instantaneous decisions, sometimes 2, 3, 4 times, 10 times a lap, but on the pit box there's all kinds of machinations going on and workings out, and base 60 maths being worked on as well with the spreadsheets. Some help nowadays electronically, but still you've got to have the right information and in some ways the right gut feel to be able to make those calls in the first place.
Oh, for sure, and it's an art, and it's one of those things where sometimes you could say, well, you know, that was just a lucky call, but it seems like the same teams make the same lucky calls, and at a certain point it's not luck anymore, it's a trend. And I think you look up and down the pit lane and there are a few names that come to mind where it seems like more often than not they're on the right end of these what would appear to be coin flip decisions.
I'll give a couple of examples that many of you will have heard before, and I apologise if you have, but it is still at the site. A couple of people have told me, and it's the same in this sport as it is in many others, the harder you work, the luckier you get, or that seems to be the case. And a conversation I once had with a man of very few words, Reinhold Joost, an absolute giant of our sport, through the 70s, 80s, 90s, and into the early 2000s, with Porsche and latterly with Audi. And Herr Joost once said to me when I said, wow, you guys, I think it was after a Petit Le Mans where everything had been good for them and every call they'd made was superb, and he actually said to me, John, you know, I'd rather be lucky than good. I remember writing that in the report I wrote for the old Autosport magazine when it was a weekly a motorsport magazine, and I wrote that in there, and I also wrote what I said back to him. You'd rather be lucky than good. Yeah, except you seem to be both. And he laughed out loud at that. Those guys seemed, again, exactly to your point, Ryan, to be on the right side of those 50-50 decision-making situations. Another lap gone by, and Stephen Thomas has just been lapped again by the leader. So he can now see the leader, but is off the lead lap. But this is this roll of the dice we were talking about for the TDS, not for Stephen Thomas. He has dropped down, but that was the Tower car that's gone a lap back as well. That's Travis Hill, that's the 8th place car. I'll try that again. I'll give you the right number. That was the right position. That's the Tower car that has been lapped by the leader there. That was the car that was spun around John Ferrano down in 11th position. Overly excited by PJ Hyatt and Spike running at 14 seconds at the head of the field. That's going to be a great radio message, isn't it? Going from Gunnar Jeanette on the pit wall to PJ Hyatt. PJ saying, where is everybody? And Gunnar being able to say to him, PJ, you've got 14 seconds on the field, man. Just keep doing what you're doing.
He's in such good form right now, PJ Hyatt. It's awesome to see, and it's easy to forget what a quick ascendancy this has been for him to get to the top levels of sports car racing. He only started in 2022 doing any kind of driving at a semi-professional level, had done some Radical Cup as well a little bit before that, but came to this super late in life, has been helped all the way along the road by Gunnar Jeanette, who helps to run that team, AO Racing, and what a program that's turned into beyond just PJ's driving, which maybe is the most admirable thing about this. So many of the gentleman drivers, they come in and they spend their money on their racing, which is great because that employs crew members and teams and all these things. It keeps the ecosystem going, but he has a broader vision that extends beyond just his role as a racing driver, and I really commend him for that because it's given, let's use Lauren Heinrich as an example. Putting him aboard Rexy last year gave him a chance to blossom, and that star now shines brightly across the world in sports car racing, and that opportunity would not have been there without the vision of Gunnar Jeanette and PJ Hyatt.
Don't underestimate the role played by Gunnar in that as well. Gunnar, for quite a long time, the youngest driver to start the race at the 24 Hours of Le Mans, and started his driving career in a Porsche 935. After that, everything else was probably fairly moderate after the absolute incredible power and high turbo boost of the Porsche 935. It's described to a driver, by a driver to me, as trying to drive a firework that had just been lit. It's just incredible. Yeah, Gunnar's played a big part there, and that is a great partnership and a great effort by everybody on the team for AO Racing. Turn 9, 8-9, almost getting another victim there, Ryan, and once again it's the number 11 of Stephen Thomas. But we've seen this all weekend. That transition between turn 8 into 9 has been catching people out. You don't have to be very far offline. Now here's the pit stops. This is Daniel Goldberg into the pit lane, 35 minutes gone. They're having a look at the right-hand front of that Orica. Looks like they're putting a bit of tape on that car. There was a polish of the windscreen, fueling up, no tyres so far, but they are cleaning out the ducts and putting more VP racing fuel into it. This looks absolutely standard. And again, this is pushing Daniel Goldberg further into the race with just on 2 hours and 4 minutes to go. He's back out again, and I'm pretty certain Dan stayed in that car. Yes, he did. So here we're seeing this strategy playing out again, and he's just stayed on the lead lap. Really important now. PJ Hyatt right in behind the red, white and blue United Autosports car with whom he was fighting for the race lead earlier on. Then that incident between the United car and Stephen Thomas in the TDS racing machine that has seen TDS drop away. And now trying to stay on the lead lap here. That's triggered the rest of the field, Ryan, and the leaders in LMP2 coming in. Let's get down to the pit lane. Goldberg out. Here comes Gar Robinson for Riley Arjuna.
He's made his way to the other end of pit lane, but I'm standing by the other of the United Autosports crews as we get ready for the flurry of LMP2 pit stops. And I think what you've just called out, John, is very important. The fact that the bronze drivers are going to be pushed deeper into this race by the timing of this pit stop. We haven't been able to get to that magic 1 hour number. I can see the Pratt and Miller crew getting ready for their driver to make their way into the pit lane as well. On the other side of pit lane, very tidy stop for the Riley crew as the driver continues behind the wheel of the car from what I can see here, but I'll keep you informed if there's driver changes down at the entry to pit lane.
There were at least 2 tyres for that Riley run car, in contrast to the Goldberg car, which did not take tyres as far as I could see from this side of the track, over the pit wall into the pit lane. There's more than one way to get to the 2 hours and 40 minutes. As we said, Ryan, in Porsche Keys to the Race, you're going to have to be flexible on your strategy. We've had no interruption from a safety car as yet, and so the teams are now having to look at how they get to the checkered flag.
This is about right on schedule, if maybe a tad on the early side for LMP2, but you have to factor in they had the parade laps, and you do burn some fuel on those parade laps too. But this is about what you would expect their window to be, and it's one of those things with the rules the way they are, the minimum drive time being 60 minutes. It's not easy to make that work with a pit stop cycle the way that you would ideally do it. So these teams, like you say, have to be kind of creative with how they elect to play these cards.
And IMSA do this deliberately. There's no doubt in my mind that that is the case. The people who write the rules for IMSA, all racers themselves, and they are forcing the teams to make those decisions. So a 2 hour 40-minute race doesn't sound much like an endurance race if you're used to 6, 10, 12, 24 hours, but you are forcing the teams to make the same sort of decisions. Arjuna Kankapati in the pit lane. A variety of strategies as far as Michelin tyre consumption are being employed down in the pit lane. What have you seen?
It was a 4-tire stop for Pratt and Miller, but the ERA Motorsports 18, no tires for them, and the same call being employed by the Inter-Europol Competition 43 as they sit right now in the pit lane. Just checking the tires, John, but they seem to be confident that the Michelins have got enough grip. PJ Hyatt's also brought in Spike down onto pit lane. I'll just call out as well, John, I talked to Robert McGuinness and to Jensen Altzman pre-race. They called this out as a medium degradation track, so the tires might be able to do this double stint as PJ Hyatt slots into his box.
And they are going to do at least left-hand side tyres here. Now remember, Daniel Goldberg came out right in front of PJ after the stop for United. This is unhurried. The determining factor here is the fuel flow going into the car on the right-hand side. 2 tyres, I reckon, there, left-hand side, the working side tyres for Spike, the Dragon, with the cape of the Stars and Stripes on the rear fin. Rather Supermanish in this week that blockbuster has hit the big screens. Out comes the 99 car back onto the track now. Where is Daniel Goldberg? He dropped 14 seconds further back, and he's just coming through turn 1 now. I think that's closed up. I really do think that's closed up. We'll get a better read on it when we get to the end of this first flying lap for PJ, but he has got new tyres on the left-hand side of that car. Hi to Jerry Z, who's joining us, one of the collective regulars on our IMSA broadcast, settling down for some great racing action. Been doing the dutiful son thing with his parents at Sunday lunch down in Florida. Welcome to the party. Now, GTD pit stops starting. Max Hesse has been, or at least the Paul Miller Racing number 48, has been in and out. Arjuna.
It's 4 Michelin tyres across the board for these GTD Pro machines. Their drive time requirement was 10 minutes, so they got that complete a long time ago. The 14 swaps, Aaron Teelitz, who did a great job in qualifying for Ben Barnico. I also see the 64, the Ford Multimatic Motorsports crew. Mike Rockenfeller is going to jump in and take over from Sebastian Prio. I'm just going to call something out for you, John, as well, as the 14 fires off and away. I saw a tyre jump over the wall before that car was even in pit lane. So just keep an eye on the race control screen. Might be a penalty coming down for that 14.
Keep an eye on that one as well. You are not allowed any equipment or people over the wall. Vass Sullivan, hugely experienced team. That would be an odd mistake for them to make. Jerry Z, actually, I'd forgotten. He's in Europe at the moment. He's in Scala with his parents. So just coming up to 9 o'clock Central European summertime. Unfeasibly hot over in Europe at the moment. Temperatures in the mid to high 30s Celsius, and I did see, I think, 40 somewhere in the Mediterranean last week. Incredible heat wave settled over Europe. Hope you enjoyed yourself, Jerry. Thanks for tuning in tonight. Dave Alcock seeing Reinhold Just, you mentioned him early on. He looked at even 50-50 odds, like blackjack odds. Used his intelligence, team members and experience to move the odds in his favour, and his record of success speaks for itself. Perfect summary. Dave, thank you for that. At IMSA Radio, if you want to get in touch. Under 2 hours to go now, Ryan. 38 minutes or thereabouts is the run. Let's call it 40 minutes on a green flag run for the LMP2 cars. Out goes the Ford Mustang number 64, and that is going to get a drive through, people over the wall before the car stops. So a mistake there for the Ford, and that will bring that number 64 back along pit lane. That is moderately costly on this track. Not hugely, but still at the moment, as we're staying green for such a long time, Ryan, anybody who is wringing an extra lap or two out of their cars, anybody who has saved a little bit of fuel, they are getting an advantage here, tactically at least.
Yes, so that was Rockefeller doing the drive-through. That was the car that Sebastian Prix had started. So that drive-through has been served. It cost him 24 seconds. Oh, and a big coming together down in Moss Corner.
Crowd strike in there, one of the Ferraris. We've also got the Riley LMP2 car as well. It's the bright yellow Ferrari. There was another car in there as well, which I think was another one of the P2s. Yes, it was. That was the dark-coloured machine, and that's got damaged on the right front of that number 73. So that's Chris Cumming for Pratt Miller. He'll dive into the pit lane now with that damage, surely. No, he's staying out. Gonna do one more lap. Everyone has continued, Ryan, and no one in the pit lane. So right Schmozzle up at Moss Corner. The Ferrari was in there. It was a dive down the in. Oh, it's 3 into 1. Just don't go. George Kurtz trying to get down the inside of the Ferrari and couldn't make that happen. And then the Riley number 74 with Gar Robinson had nowhere to go and had to stop. George having to do a flick turn further up the hill. And this is a perfect illustration of what happens in multi-class racing. 3 LMP2 cars fighting together and getting caught up with that GT car, which might not be as powerful, but is actually quite nimble through the corners, particularly on the slower corners, Ryan.
Right, yeah, with all the electronic aids they have and all the mechanical grip that they make, not as reliant on downforce. And poor Brendan Areve just got tipped around there. Nothing he could have done. Gar Robinson also an innocent victim there. He had nowhere to go and just had to stop. And that saw he had to sit there and watch a couple of his LMP2 rivals come through. Jeremy Clark and Nick Poole, the big winners there. They gained a couple of positions without having to make too much effort, jumping up to 3rd and 4th respectively. But boy, that is costly for a handful of the drivers involved, and it's actually brought Areve to the pit lane along with Ori Fidani, which is interesting. Those are the 2 that are battling for that Aiken Award once again. They're even on points coming into this weekend here at CTMP.
That is the award that at the end of the season, the winner will receive an invitation, one of three that IMSA have, one each for the best gentleman drivers in GT and prototype, and then an at-large invitation, which is at IMSA's discretion, to Le Mans 24 Hours for the next season. And highly sought after those invitations are, and will only become more highly sought after in future years, as we have more and more manufacturers wanting to come and play in the hypercar category, which squeezes LMP2, which is not now in the World Endurance Championship, but is allowed at Le Mans for a one-off running, and also, of course, in the LMGT3, that we call GTD here. So right in the middle of all of the pit stops now. We'll do another VP in-race update in a little while, once it's all settled down. Not the tidiest bit of repair, remedial action required on the right front of the 120 Porsche. That got clipped earlier on by, I think it was the TDS car, wasn't it, that was going through. But it's holding the front of that car on. Back into the pit lane again for Tower. John Ferrano bringing that car back into the pit lane after 49 minutes near enough, as Ben Barnicat puts the fastest lap of the GTD Pro race in on a 1:16.3. He has made his first pit stop. Let's pick up some of the drivers who started the race. BMW, first of all, Paul Miller Racing, Dan Harper.
One of the first drivers to jump out of his GTD Pro machine How was the opening stint of the race? Hot?
Yeah, hot. I got a good start, gained a position on one of the Corvettes, and I think on the outside of 2, which was quite fun. I mean, this track with these fast corners at the beginning, it's a cool start of the race. It's always high speed, door to door, so I love that sort of racing. Then I just sort of settled into a rhythm. It's honestly quite difficult to overtake here unless you have a big top speed advantage, which unfortunately we don't have. So yeah, it was just sort of in a train, and we played it quite safe, to be honest, with the pressures and the tires, and they eventually, with the heat and following so close for the full stint, my pressures were so high, so I was in the end just sliding all over the show, which is why we decided to pit early. And yeah, now we hope that Max can do a good job, and let's see where we end up.
Yeah, I was going to ask, because we've just heard the sister car fire off, claps going around, so sounds like a good pit stop as well. Was there any intention to try and go as long as your teammate had gone, and it was just the reaction on the tire pressures to bring yourself in?
Yeah, I mean, ideally we would have tried to go a bit longer, but yeah, I was just sliding so much. I was getting vulnerable to the Ford behind, which they've ended up jumping us now. So yeah, they are very, very fast. They have the speed on the straight. I had to defend quite a few times. So yeah, we'll try our best, and I mean, there's still a long way to go.
If I remember correctly, you guys used one set of stickers yesterday in qualifying. Does that mean you've got a set of stickers left for the next stop?
We have one for the end, yes, but I'm not sure. I mean, other people could save one and maybe practice or whatever, so normally everyone ends up on the same strategy somewhere, but let's see.
Thanks for the insight.
I have no idea what kind of hypnosis or whatever Arjuna Kankapati is practicing down in the pit lane. But particularly this weekend, Ryan, I've never heard drivers be more open about strategy to any pit reporter ever in the world.
Maybe they find
got some great action on. True enough. Great action on the back straight at the top of the field in LMP2 with George Kurtz still in the 0-4. He's just gone a lap down as PJ Hyatt drives past him. They went either side of the Triarsi competition Ferrari, and I have to say I held my breath there for a wee moment. Last time I saw something like this, I was commentating Formula 1 at Spa in that famous moment. Oh, was there a slight touch there by the race leader on the All-21 coming up on the right-hand side? I think he got hit by both of them, actually. Not much, but a little touch on that 0-21 by both of those cars as George was trying to stay on the lead lap, Ryan.
Yeah, Onofrio Triarsi has been roughed up a little bit in this race, unfortunately. He's actually shown as the leader in GTD at the moment, but they're on a different sequence, having had their issues early on, so that's something to keep an eye on. But yeah, that was super close right there. And this is what we talked about, the way that these classes play together here at CTMP. There's not just that massive straight line advantage for the top class, which makes for some pretty tense moments like that. You're trying to get it sorted out before you get to the corner, and in that particular case, with two prototypes arriving at the same time, one of which trying desperately to stay on the lead lap, can lead to it coming together like we just saw.
I'm not sure what PJ Hyatt had for breakfast or indeed lunch, but everybody else is going to want to know. He's 2 seconds a lap quicker than Goldberg. He's about 7/10 quicker than Jeremy Clark and Nick Bowell, and at least that on the rest of the field. Now, traffic will be playing a part of that. He has got new left-hand side tyres. Those are the tyres that, generally speaking, are doing the most work. But my goodness, he's using that performance and every iota of it to give his teammate Dane Cameron the best opportunity. 1 hour and 46 minutes to go. So just under the hour gone. This is incredible. Everybody's done their pit stops apart from the top 3 in GTD Pro. They are going a different way. Interesting what we heard from Dan Harper about the tyre pressures getting high, car starting to move around. Why didn't they set the tyre pressures lower? I hear you saying to me, well, don't forget that The starting pressures are mandated by Michelin and by IMSA, and they are monitored. Let's take a quick pit report from Arjuna Kankapani, and next up we'll have another in-race update. Arjuna?
Robert Wickens is out of the car, and we'll talk to him later on, but I think there's another story in this DXDT camp to talk about, and that's Josh Smith, who helps Robert get in and out of the car. Obviously, Robert, with his accident several years ago, needs the assistant, but Josh, it really is a team game, and I've heard about the practice that you guys have been doing back at the headquarters to try and make this driver change process as seamless as possible.
Yeah, we practice a lot at the shop, a lot here at the track, on the pit lane, but also back at the paddock, so it's a lot of work to get back into getting Robert just as fast as everybody else.
And this isn't your first driver that you've helped in this regard as well. That's what makes it so cool to me. You were helping Michael Johnson in this very same regard several years ago.
Yeah, I worked with Michael Johnson for many years, and then was able to transition with Robbie when he needed me, so it's been a good transition.
From your perspective, what are the things that you need to do when you're helping Robbie get in and out of the car? What are those unique things that maybe we don't think about that you've got to think about?
It becomes calm and but yet fast at the same time. That's the biggest thing. We got 4 hands moving in there to get everything done. This is a little bit of a mess.
And I know you're a former football player, and one thing I saw in the article IMSA had written about this entire driver change process, you have to be firm, but you're not hurting him at the same time.
It's very accurate. I mean, it's not just a rip out. It's we are coming here to put together a nice fast transition, but at the same time we're watching for his legs to get caught or anything else, so that way we're not injuring ourselves. That's the way it stays in the car.
And a story I was told, John, is that Robert actually put some Velcro on the pedals just to help him keep his feet a little bit more secure. Josh, I think you got one more thing to say there, maybe.
I didn't hear that. What'd you say?
Never mind, we're all good. Thanks for the chat, Josh, and thanks for all you do as well.
Hey, thank you. Thank you, and it's exciting to see Serpro be a part of this weekend as well with the car.
Thank you so much.
Let's start with GTD Pro. They haven't made their pit stops yet at the front of the field, so AO Racing and Porsche still leading. That number 77 Porsche then ahead of Fred Verviche for Ford Multimatic. No, they must have made a stop because Fred didn't start that Mustang, so maybe my counter is wrong. Giacomo Altoia did start the Dragon Speed Ferrari, he's in third. Lexus and Ben Barnicut now behind the wheel of the 14 car in fourth, and Alex Sims in fifth. Alexander Sims in fifth for Corvette Racing, the number 3 car. Top 6 made up by Madison Snow, who's taken over the pole-sitting Paul Miller Racing BMW. In GTD on a Triarsi on a completely different strategy to everyone else. They stopped early. He's going further into the race in the Ferrari 296, the 021. Jack Hawksworth is in second for Vassar Sullivan Racing. Phil Ellis in third, now having taken over the Winward Racing Mercedes, the number 57. Robbie Foley in fourth, another 10 seconds further back for Turner Motorsports BMW number 96. Then it's Roman DeAngelis in the Hartnett Racing Aston Martin. And Alec Udell now behind the wheel of the Chevrolet Corvette, vacated by Robert Wickens, the DXDT number 36 car at the front of the field. After the pit stops, there's now 18 seconds, so my eyes were deceiving me. And PJ Hyatt continues this roller coaster of a ride around this circuit. Well, he's steamrollering everybody else at the moment, but Dan Goldberg in second place for United Autosports. They've both been in from the start. Jeremy Clark has moved up to third position. He's 23 seconds behind Dan Goldberg. Then it's Nick Bull, who's another 2 seconds further back. And Stephen Thomas for TDS Racing, well, they are back in the fight. The TDS number 11 in 5th position. And in 6th, it's Gar Robinson for Riley, despite being held up with that 4-car incident at turn 5. That's how we stand with just under an hour elapsed. We've got 1 hour and 41 minutes to go. Ryan Marine, John Hindhoff in the Ford Performance Global Broadcast Centre, 90.7 around the track, Sirius 206 in North America and around the world on RS2, as well as the World Feed TV, live and free for those of you outside the US on the IMSA YouTube channel. And what great battling we have had in all three classes so far, Ryan. Good scrap going on. Corvette, DXDT versus the cars around them, just trying to put a lap on one of the cars at the moment. But what about PJ Hyatt? I can't say enough. He's 20 seconds up the road here on the rest of the field. They're going to have to get a crowbar to get him out of that car. He's having a time of his life.
Well, let's think about the last month or so for PJ, because he won his class, of course, at the 24 Hours of Le Mans in June. On the back of that, came stateside, finished second in the Salem 6 Hours of the Glen. And then last weekend, he was racing at Imola, the European Le Mans Series, in an LMP2 car and won there as well. So he's in a fine vein of form right now. I don't know how much of that carries over from one championship to the next, but for someone especially who doesn't do this as a full-time job, although he dedicates plenty of time to it, as that schedule would indicate, there's got to be something about turning up on a race weekend and knowing you're in a good rhythm and knowing you're in a flow to give you the confidence you need to perform.
I think that's a number of points very well made from Ryan Marine there. So we now have gone through the first hour of racing with still 100 minutes to go. One or two of the cars showing some battle scars out there, but right now everyone is back timing. At least one more stop for everyone still to go for the LMP2 cars that can do about 40 minutes on a tank of VP racing fuel. It'll be 2 stops for the guys at the front of the field, unless there's some intervention. And how is this going to play out? At the moment, advantage AO Racing in both classes, GTD Pro and LMP2, leading by considerable margins. Klaus Bachler by 10 seconds over Fred Vervisch in the Ford Mustang GT3 number 65.
It is worth noting. Sorry, John.
Sorry, Ryan.
Apologies.
No, my fault. Go ahead.
Jumped in right on top of you. But it is worth noting as Vervisch now peels off and pits. The top 3 in GTD Pro did still owe a pit stop. So Vervisch, who did end up starting this race, according to my grid at least, he started in 9th. The other 3 cars as well all started down the order, didn't have track position. So I think that's why we're seeing them do something different relative to the rest of the field. Run long here on this first stint, and that might open up some chances later on.
Yeah, absolutely right. I should never have doubted the timing and scoring from Al Kamel. I was looking at entirely the wrong piece of paper when I was doing that VP update. So that is the first stop for Fred Vervisch. Chris Meese getting in that car to full service for the Ford Mustang GT3. They'll go, I mean, they've gone over an hour, so that means just one more stop for them, and then a 35, 40-minute run to the end of the race. So if they can get their last stop done, it'll be shorter than everybody else's. That's impressive. Meantime, as well, it's not been a good day for Tower Motorsports. John Ferrano back into the pits. This time he has given the car over to Renger van der Zande, having completed his 1 hour behind the wheel. So Renger will do a run to the checkered flag, but they've lost quite a bit of time. I'm still looking at the lap times of PJ Hyatt. It's absolutely extraordinary, Ryan. Jeremy Clark was quicker last time around, and so was Stephen Thomas, as they were less traffic affected. But generally speaking, he's a couple to 5 tenths quicker every lap than anybody around him. He's stretched out to 27 seconds in the lead. He's not going to be long if he goes like this, that he's almost, I mean, he's lapped up to, I think he's lapped up the 6th position at the moment. And it's not going to be long before he can almost have a pit stop in hand. Meantime, the other AO Racing car comes into the pit lane. This is the 77 Porsche. They've gone 1 hour and 4 minutes. Arjuna is watching the pit stop.
And a very tidy driver change as well as Klaus Bachler strapped Lauren Heinrich in. And the thing I'm noting here, John, it's not a set of stickers, instead a scrub set of the Michelin tires going on to Rexy. We'll see how that plays out. Remember, we were wondering if there were going to be sticker tires at play for some of the GTD machines come the end of the race. But the middle stint of this 2 hour, 40-minute sprint, Rexy's decided scrub tires are enough. It's going to be about 100 seconds or so before it's able to exit the lane. 99 seconds on the LED board. Tidy stop from the AO Racing crew.
That means that there's only Dragon Speed Ferrari and Giacomo Altoe to make a stop in the GT. In fact, in the field, in the whole field. That car is the last one to us a stop. With due deference to Giacomo, he hasn't had the pace of the cars around him, but he's fulfilled his driver time, and he is well inside of a further stop to the end of the race. But AO Racing, now they have had a bit of pace, and that means they're going to have a final stint of somewhere in the order, Ryan, of half an hour. And that is around about 10 minutes, maybe even a little bit more, shorter than the cars that they are fighting. And less VP fuel going in your last stop means less time standing still. That's track position right there.
Exactly, especially if they can make that stop under yellow when everybody's all bunched together. That's where that can really fall into their hands. On track, we had a really good battle a moment ago. Alexander Sims and Madison Snow fighting for position. That was 3rd and 4th, although about to become 2nd and 3rd in GTD Pro with the Altoe stop when that comes. Sims, of course, winner here last year with Garcia. And right now, the championship leaders in GTD Pro. They've yet to win a race, though, this year. This is where they scored the first win for the Corvette in IMSA as well. And I believe to date, that could still be the only win for the Corvette in IMSA, if memory serves. I better double-check that. But nevertheless, this has been a great track for Corvette over the years, as we've talked about throughout the week. And it seems like that car is starting to come to the fore.
48 laps completed from that AO Racing Porsche before it came into the pit lane. Extraordinary run for the number 7 car. Absolutely extraordinary. Actually, I think it might have been 49, depending on where they are on the pit lane. Dragon Speed are now in. Giacomo Altoe, and he's come in at the end of lap number 51. From the lead, was scored as the leader. Albert Costa will take that car. And there's a full course yellow. Full course yellow, and it's the CrowdStrike APR car that's offered turn 3 in the wall. Has been across the track, and there's debris across there. Oh my goodness me. 1 lap too late. Travis Hill has entered a closed pit. We're right on the next set of pit stops for LMP2s. Travis Hill came in but did not stop at the Era Motorsport pit. So he's gone through. I don't think that is going to be a penalty. We'll get that checked by Arjuna down in the pit lane. EMR safety crew already at the 04. George Kurtz, CrowdStrike Racing by APR, has had a sizable impact, possibly multiple impacts actually, looking at the debris. And we'll get you news of George as soon as we have it, with 91.5 minutes to go when that full course yellow came out. 37 seconds was the gap that PJ Hyatt had built up, and that will disappear. Oh, there's a wheel and hub being picked up. George is out of the car. He's sitting on the retaining wall and talking to the AMR safety crew. They will make sure he's fine. He's going to go to the infield care centre. Gets into the back of the Porsche Cayenne. Well, he'll be nice and comfy on the way back, but he will be annoyed with himself if it was his own mistake. But the good news is he's out of the car. Dane Cameron standing by, waiting for his car to come into the pit lane. Let's quickly go down to Arjuna in the pit lane. It looked like they were a moment or two late coming into the pit lane, but I'm saying a moment or two. I think it was probably a second or two. Full course yellow came out at 13 minutes and 14 seconds past the hour. Travis Hill came in at 13 minutes and 15 seconds past the hour. So heads up from ERA if they did go straight through.
Yeah, very heads-up driving and awareness from them, John, to be recognisable of that situation. But that's the way that the full course cautions sometimes go in endurance racing. 1 second here and there could make a big difference, because I can tell you, it's not just Dane Cameron ready to jump into the LMP2 cars and replace the bronze drivers that have gone a full 60 minutes plus. I see Inter Europe already to swap their driver in as well. There's a whole bunch of angry pros ready to jump into their Oricas.
If this goes on for a little while longer, Ryan, you might see some people, if we get somewhere nearer to 80 minutes than 90 minutes, then potentially, with a bit of fuel save, those LMP2 cars could be one more stop to the end.
Yeah, that's a really interesting thing to consider. If, yeah, you might see somebody towards the back of the field come back in to top off or hold off on this pit stop if it looks like this could be a lengthy cleanup. And it very well might be. Good to see George Kurtz out of the car under his own power, because that we've not seen it, but we've seen the aftermath, and it has the makings of a pretty substantial hit. I think what ERA was doing, though, is they knew a full course yellow was imminent, and they tried to pull a blinder on the field, and they almost did. If they had got the timing right, if they had just been a couple seconds further up the road, they could have been in the pit lane when the yellow came out, did their stop, did the driver change, and then cycled to the front when the rest of the field inevitably pits under this yellow. Maybe not cycled all the way to the front, actually, because they're down a lap, but it could have helped them strategically nevertheless. That said, I think now just about everybody in P2 who's on the lead lap, and I think that's just the top 6 at this point, such as the pace of PJ Hyatt thus far in the race. Yeah. This resets their strategy. All of their drive times are taken care of. We'll see the pros climb aboard whenever they do make the pit stop. And then I think you're right. The only question for LMP2 here is how close do you wait to get to roughly the 80-minute mark to try and make this in one more stop from here?
I suspect that Phil Fair and Travis Hill, probably Chris Cummings, will stay out. Chris Cummings will stay out and get their lap back on the leaders, and then try and hustle around to get their pit stop in when we reset the field. It's a very damaged CrowdStrike by APR. Orica Gibson with the left front suspension torn asunder this Sunday. Well, let's find out who comes in and who stays out. It's right at the top of the hill at the exit of Quebec Corner, by the way. Not sure if we'd mentioned that, so probably he's gone a little bit wide, getting on the power, coming out of that right-hander, dropped onto the grass, and from that point speared into the retaining wall and the barriers on driver's left. So let's see who comes to the pits. PJ Hyatt will be the first driver to have the opportunity. The pass around has been completed, so if you're seeing cars go past the safety car or just have, don't worry, That's any of the GTD Pro or GTD cars that were trapped between the safety car and their class leaders. So they don't lose a lap, they go back around to the end of the crocodile before the pits open. And now, as we said in our Porsche Keys to the Race, flexible strategy. For the top 6, I think it's pretty easy. You're all going to pit now and be on the same strategy with around about one pit stop to go. One pit stop and 5 minutes to go. Here they come. Arjuna's got a lot of takers as they head to the pit lane. Looks like the whole of the top 6 have dived in. Arjuna?
But as you called out, the likes of Fayer, Hill and Cumming will stay on the track for the time being. Out jumps PJ Hyatt, and a 6th pole position in 11 starts in the LMP2 class in the IMSA WeatherTech SportsCar Championship. He is a star in the making, there's no doubt about that. The 74 crew hit their marks as well. I see the number 22 United Autosport getting 4 Michelin tires thrown onto the car. Tom Dillman's jumped into that into Europole machine. Ryan DL's going to jump into the Era Motorsports car, but it is a perfect pit stop for Dane Cameron, lights the rear tires up and exits in the race lead.
Great to hear those Gibson engines being revved. Going out, Tom Blomqvist in 2nd place. Who's going to come out in 3rd? It was the light blue car, Benjamin Pedersen. In PR1, Matheson, then Tom Dillman in 4th for Inter Europol. The 74 Riley Run Machine has had a new tailpiece put on that car, but they were a little bit further down. So Hunter McElrea went out in 6th place. Now Felipe Fraga, yeah, so he came in a little bit later than everybody else, and he's gone out in 6th, I reckon. So I reckon it's Ben Pedersen for PR1 has moved up to 3rd, Tom Dillman to 4th, Hunter McElrea to 5th, and Felipe Fraga, I think, went out in 6th, but they're all going to be line astern. Phil Fayer for United Autosport, the number 2 car, Travis Hill for Era Motorsport, the number 18, and Chris Cumming for Pratt Miller, the number 73. All have had, shall we say, eventful first hour and 16 minutes of their races. They're going to stay out and try and get their lap back when the pits open for the GTs, which is about to happen now. And at this point, expect to see all of the GT cars coming in. Phil Ellis has stayed out. That's interesting. So is Robbie Foley for Turner Motorsport, both GTD cars. But Daniel Serra may have stayed out as well. I'll hold on for that, because sometimes my timing and scoring takes a moment. No, I absolutely think that Phil Ellis for Winwood and Robbie Foley have gone through. I can see that on the tracker. Arjuna, you've got the GTD field.
And I'm looking at GTD Pro. Andrea Caldarelli's jumping back into the Lamborghini, replacing Margot Boppelli. But I'm not seeing too many other driver changes up and down pit lane. The number 12 Lexus has to slow its roll as it tries to rejoin the fast lane. But John, it's a lengthy stop for the 14. The GTD Pro, Vassar Sullivan, that at one point was running up in 2nd in the race, is going to be running down the order as they leave the pit lane.
Looked like the number 4 Corvette was stationary for a longer time, but they'd finished working on it. It was just the fuel going in there, Ryan, and this is what we were talking about earlier. People who saved a bit of fuel early on and got a few extra laps, they would have needed fewer litres, fewer gallons of VP Racing fuel, and therefore they'd have been stationary slightly less amount of time.
Right, that was the benefit for those that ran long in that opening stint that we were talking about. And as I said, getting to do it under yellow is super helpful. I need to do a little bit of thinking about what the strategy situation is for those that stayed out under this yellow, but I do want to cover off one thing in LMP2. The big winner in all of that was certainly the 11. Remember, Stephen Thomas pitted extremely early, 20 minutes or thereabouts into the race, it looks like. And then they were due to come in really any time when that yellow came out. They were really close to running out of fuel. They ran about 47 minutes on the stint, a good chunk of that under the yellow. But what this has let them do is recover, whereas they had lost a lot of ground with the spin that they had early in the race. That's all been wiped away. They're now back on level footing, and they're up a couple of positions as well. So the timing of that yellow was really good for the TDS team.
I can't make head nor tail of why Winward and Robbie Foley stayed out. They are 21 laps into around about a 31 to 34 lap stint. So they are more than halfway through their stint is the point that I'm making there. Unless they think that if they it's not going to make any difference. They've still got one pit stop to go, and so has everybody else. But there's no way that the GT cars can go in an hour and 20 minutes. So everybody's going to have a pit stop, but theirs is going to be longer than everybody else's because they're going to need a full fuel load, whereas those who've just come in are going to need fuel only for 20 minutes or thereabouts. Here comes the LMP2 cars that didn't stop last time around. Arjuna is watching the trio, being United Autosports number 2, Era Motorsports number 18, and Pratt Miller Motorsports number 73. They've just tried to get the lap back there. That's perfectly sensible, Arjuna.
Exactly as you called it earlier, John. I think this was the only call that they really had, and the timing of the caution in some ways has probably helped them out as well. This is a race that historically we've had 2 or 3 cautions, and we typically see one in the last 20 or 30 laps of the race. So just keep that in mind, John, with the hour and 20 odd minutes that we've still got left to run.
And we're just starting the category splits, so they should be able to come back to the front of the field and will be on the end of the lead lap in 7th, 8th and 9th position. And remember what I said, if you can get closer to 80 minutes than 90 when you do your fuel fill, then you've got a chance of doing this as an LMP2 car on just one more stop. Where if those cars come out, 1 hour and 19 minutes, so 79 minutes for those cars, with still a couple of laps perhaps before we go to green. They have a slight, very slight, but it could be crucial, fuel advantage, Ryan Marine, on everybody who stopped, the top 6 who stopped at the first option under that full course caution.
Yeah, it's basically a 5-minute advantage, but it's all been run under yellow, so you can take about half of that away. It's maybe a lap or 2. Yeah, I'm interested. I think what we learned, though, from the 11, going 47 minutes, although a little bit of that was under yellow, is I think everybody should be, with maybe a slight bit of fuel save for those that pitted the first time by, should be in their window to do this on one stop. The thing we do know is those that just pitted, they shouldn't have to think too hard about saving fuel once we go back green. They should be able to go full-on attack, which means turning Ben Hanley, Pietro Fittipaldi, and Ryan Dial loose, which should be a lot of fun.
Nicky Katzberg in and out the top off the number 4 Corvette. Now, I thought that was the car that perhaps had some problems. I wonder if they didn't get all the fuel in at that last stop. Arjuna's got a bit of detective work to do there. I don't think that it would have helped them to splash and refill. They can probably still go about an hour, 55 minutes to an hour, so there's still going to be one stop for all the GT cars in this race. So after a nasty looking incident for the 04, which has taken George Kurtz and the CrowdStrike machine out of contention, we are ready to go back to racing. Now, I've just seen Race Control put a message out to say category and class splits can go on till turn 7. and those 3 LMP2 cars coming back, United, Pratt Miller and Era, were still overtaking people through turn 8 and 9. Back to green flag, an hour and 16 minutes exactly, as Tony enthusiastically as ever raises the green flag to the sky. Dane Cameron leads for AO Racing overall. It's Lauren Heinrich for AO Racing that leads. That's worked really nicely for them, staying out as long as they did, as with Christopher Meese and Alexander Sims. So they have benefited from the timing of that yellow flag. AO with 2 class leaders at the moment. Phil Ellis stayed out, as did Robbie Foley for Winward and Turner Motorsport respectively. So they have got about another 10 laps or thereabouts to go in terms of VP Racing fuel. So that's what, just over, probably getting on towards 15 minutes of racing. That'll bring them close to the hour, and they can make their last pit stop. Maybe they're just going to make their last pit stop first and then wait to see what everybody else does. That is, I suppose, that is the tactic there for those 2 cars that stayed out. That's the only way I can make sense of that, Ryan, is that they're going to come in with just under an hour to go and try and force everybody else to come in at the same time. But of course, everyone else will have shorter stops.
Exactly. I think you're spot on. That is their plan here. And these are 3 cars that didn't have great track position anyway. So what this does, they recognized everyone else in the class is going to have to stop an additional time anyway. Let's not do 2 stops. Let's just do the 1. That then cycles them to the front here, and they are on the same sequence as everyone, just a different length of pit stop to try and get to the end. They can go roughly another 22 minutes here, so they can easily get to that hour mark and then come in, and probably, you're right, I think that would probably force the strategy of the rest of the class, at least those that are not willing to roll the dice.
It's a tiny little bit early for our Pelotti mid-race recap, but given what's happened, it's probably a good idea to do it now. 63 laps completed. Dane Cameron leads the race by 1.3 seconds. In terms of cars out of the race, it is only that 04 CrowdStrike machine that we've had that issue with that brought out the full course caution. And Dane Cameron then leading, AO leading 2 classes, with Phil Ellis and Winward Racing leading their class. That is the Pelotti mid-race recap here at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. Let's find out the thinking behind the Winward tactics. They're leading the championship, they're now leading their class as well. Down in the Winward Racing AMG pit, here's Arjuna, and he's with Russell Ward,
who's keeping a close eye on the monitors as this race restarts. Russell, I've got to ask the question. What's the strategy call?
Yeah, well, I heard that Turner's going to follow our strategy, which is a bit of a problem because we were going to follow their strategy. So, you know, I guess we'll just stay out there and run out of fuel.
That was what Will Turner told me. This is what makes this type of racing so unique, right? We'd gone green until about halfway through the race, and then caution mixes up everything for you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's always seems to be these mid and late race cautions here at Continental Tire Motorsports Park. I mean, it is, I mean, it's an awesome racetrack. So, I mean, we'll just see where we are, and it's kind of hard to overtake out there. But right now we're in a good position, and yeah.
You left the car in the perfect place for your teammate. What was the biggest challenge that you had out there in that first stint?
The car felt really quick. I mean, kind of just getting held up, and I saw that Jack was able to get by, the Dragon Speed car and really, pulled a gap, and I just wasn't able to find a way around. So for me, just a lap of fuel, stint full of fuel saving, and came in and was able to at least jump them in pit lane. So.
Keeping his cards close to his chest, but I can tell you, John, Turner Motorsport hoping to follow Winward to some success here today.
Two great characters there in Russell Ward, who, as well as being the driving challenge for Winward Racing, is also effectively the team principal as well there. Took on that role when Russell and his dad formed Winward Racing, which seems like 5 minutes ago, but they have built that team into a powerhouse of racing here in the US and in Europe. Remember running the official AMG entries in DTM as well as GT3 cars in a variety of different series, from Altenbach in Germany, which moved relatively recently into new premises. I saw the old one, they were impressive. I can't imagine what the new ones what they've moved into in the new one to want to move out of the old ones, but I'll have a ride down there at some stage in the future. Is this making sense to you yet, Ryan, in terms of that GTD battle with Winward and Turner?
Yes, I'd like to amend one thing I said before slightly. I said that the 3 that didn't pit didn't have track position. I think that was largely true with the Turner car and with the 34, but it was, I would say, a bit of a gamble from the Winward team because they were running up towards the front of their class, and so perhaps it's the fact that they have a cushion in the championship that lets them feel like they have a little bit more wiggle room. I'm not entirely sure, but we'll see how this goes. What we do know is that everyone in the 2 GT classes still has to pit one more time. There's no one that can go the distance as it stands, and so that's where they find themselves on even footing. But the difference is how much fuel is required, how deep into the run you go. Maybe you could think about only doing 2 tires versus 4 for those that pitted more recently. So there's still a little bit of a wrinkle strategically that needs to be played out. But yeah, a few things that need to get sorted through, no question, to get to the bottom of who played their cards right here.
In fact, everybody's got to make one more pit stop, even the LMP2s. Some of them might have to do one and a splash. It's going to be tight for some of those drivers at the front of the field, but it is all the pros that are in there now. Renger van der Zande last time around did a 109.166. That's the new fastest lap of the LMP2 race. He's pulled a lap back in that yellow safety car sequence. He's now only 3 laps back of the field, but the other 9 LMP2s are all on the lead lap and only 8 seconds between them. And looking at the timing screen now, and you can follow along on livetiming.imsa.com, and you can see all of the Alcamel screens, the tracker and everything that we have in the For Performance Global Broadcast Centre. And there's a lot of light colours in that LMP2 category as people are setting their cars fastest laps of the race, peppering the 109.9, 109.8, 110, 110.1 for various people, but there's a lot of quick times coming in now. I don't think there's much fuel saving going on at the front of the field, Ryan, from Dane Cameron, Tom Blomqvist, Benjamin Pedersen, Tom Dillman, Hunter McElrea, Felipe Fraga, Ben Hanley, Pietro Fittipaldi, Ryan DL and Renger van der Zande. What a 10 count that is, by the way, for racing drivers in any series, and that's just the top 10 in our top class.
It's pretty good, isn't it? You gotta love it, and it's one of the reasons I love having this LMP2 as the top class moment here to shine the light on just how good these teams and drivers are when sometimes they can get overshadowed by the GTP cars as the top class and all of the factory talent in some of the GT cars. And right now, these pros in the P2s are about to get challenged in a big way because they've caught the back of the GT field and are, as long as we stay green, probably going to be mired in traffic for a good chunk of time here in the next 4 or 5 laps or so.
Sorry, just getting a bit of good news from race control and from the circuit, courtesy of Aaron Stevens, our producer in Concord, as we like to call him, the voice of reason in our ears. George Kurtz has been evaluated and released from the track care centre, the medical centre, so that's really good news. The car will need some remedial work on it for Stuart Cox and the rest of the Algarve Pro Racing team. They've got a little work to do, more than a little work to do, but that's very good news indeed. And before this all kicks off again, and in case I forget before the end, thank you very much to all of our technical crew, Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, Concord and London this weekend, in particular our intrepid camera operators who've been scorched, wind-blown, soaked, and then literally rinsed and repeated, and have brought us some great images that you're enjoying now if you're outside the US. And also the responsible adult, Eve Hewitt, her usual brilliant self, and particularly to our viewers and listeners getting in touch with us from trackside, listening on 90.7 FM or around the North American region on Sirius Channel 206 today, RS2, and of course on the IMSA YouTube channel and the player on IMSARadio.com, the video player there as well. Thank you for your conversation. I'll put it like that, because that is exactly what it's like. It's been really good to see as well, you interacting with each other, whether you're at the circuit or further afield. And I know there's quite a few of you who have only been talking digitally in the past who've met up this weekend for the first time. Great to see the sports car community working together and pulling together as always, and enjoying our shared love of this multi-class racing this weekend, and plenty more to come over the next weeks and months here on IMSA Radio and IMSA TV and across the RSL Radio Show Limited's network of audio and visual channels. So just on an hour and 5 minutes to go, and I don't see at the moment, Ryan, I'll be corrected if you think I'm wrong, I don't see there's any need for the GT cars at the front of the field. They're going to be pushing because they've got to stop anyway. The LMP2s, the decision is, can you make it on one more stop with a tiny bit of fuel save, or do you push anyway and just see where you end up? But the sort of pace I'm seeing at the moment, even through traffic, Dane Cameron, Tom Dillman, Tom Blomqvist, still only 2 seconds apart, with Benjamin Petterman just another Pedersen just another quarter second back. This is proper racing with an hour and 4 minutes to go. Nobody's waiting to see what's happening. They're on the attack right now.
And it's been hot and heavy since the restart. Blomqvist in particular really struggling, John. He's just dropped 3 or 4 positions over the last 2 laps. Dillman put a move first on Pedersen to get up a position. Then he got around Blomqvist just about a straightaway later, so he's really flying. He picked up 2 positions on 1 lap to get up to second, and Blomqvist has dropped 2 more spots as just a few moments ago. Pedersen up the inside, and then Hunter McElroy follows him through. So yeah, it has been a free fall of sorts since the restart for Tom Blomqvist, who was brought in to help the championship bid, let's not forget, of Dan Goldberg, but he's gone backwards here since the restart.
A nice piece of opportunist racing by Benjamin Pedersen in the light blue number 52 car, followed through by Hunter McElroy in the black and yellow number 11, coming through the second part of Moss Corner 5B. Really, I don't see that Tom did anything wrong there. He was following the Dragon Speed Ferrari and did what most people do, is sort of let the middle of that corner breathe, but in doing that, lost a couple of positions, and he's under threat again, actually, as they come onto the start-finish line. And Tom Dillman is on a tear at the moment, as we've just had a pit stop from that looked like the number 66 with damage to the right rear, the gradient Ford, should I say, just coming out of the pit lane, and actually may have been a couple of pit stoppers there. Arjuna is keeping an eye on that, but side-by-side action and side-by-side touching as they go into the Corvette Chevrolet bridge down towards turn 4. And that again is the LMP2 cars. That is the TDS machine of Hunter McElroy and Benjamin Pedersen for PR1 going through traffic, and for a moment they were side-by-side, 3 wide going through the traffic. My goodness me, that could have been a big accident. But the hip and shoulder, they were a little bit more respectful and decided to back out of it. It's meant that Pedersen has opened out half a second lead or thereabouts. So there have been some pit stops in GT with an hour and 1 minute to go. So those are drivers and teams who think they're going to the end. There was a drive-through for the Gradient team, a tyre that was left unattended, and that is going to bring them back down the pit lane again. And we're hearing that that tyre wasn't just left lying on its side, it actually rolled out to the fast lane, and therefore safety risk. Right, let's get back to these battles at the sharper end of the field. Pretty much everybody who is in the battle, this was a moment or two ago, was going past the Lamborghini. Hunter McElrea with the right-hand side Michelin's on the dirt. And he was very skillfully avoiding a big accident there. So pit stops, I reckon, for Wright Motorsports Porsche, the number 120, for Fred Schandorf for Inception Racing in the Ferrari number 70, DXTT, Chevy Corvette, Alex Udell, 6th place in GTT on resumption, Lamborghini Huracan, Forte Racing, Mario Farnbacher, the number 78 car, in GTD Pro, and Roman De Angelis as well, and Phil Ellis, they've just come out as well. So they've made their last pit stops. That's the thinking there in those cars. Chris Meese has done the same in GTD Pro. Nicky Katzberg, I think, has been down 3 already. But Mike Rockenfeller's now in the pits making what he expects to be his final pit stop. So this is all about making your last pit stop first. We'll discuss that in a moment with Ryan Marine, but at the front of the field, Ryan, we have a proper scrap now in clear air. Dane Cameron versus Tom Dillman on the front straight.
And Dillman is the quicker of the two. He has been for the last few laps. He just took 9/10 of a second. No, sorry, he didn't. His run stalled out a bit. But prior to that, he had been taking 6/10, 7/10 of a second off of the leader with each passing lap. Dillman was the star last year, of course, bringing home the win. The only win in the championship season for Inter Europol and PR1, which ran as a tandem last year, and he's done a great job to run down Dane Cameron here. Another driver on the move, though, is Felipe Fraga, who a couple moments ago put a move on Hunter McElrea to get up to 5th. That's the runner-up from last year. So 2 of the strong cars from 1 year ago, again flexing some muscle.
I think this is very interesting at the front of the field, that there are a couple of cars that could get caught on the wrong side of a safety car, including the leader and Pfaff Motorsports Lamborghini. Everyone else is stopping now, even though they only stopped 8 or 9 laps ago in that caution period. It's a relatively short stop. I've not seen anybody putting on tyres. We'll confirm that with Arjuna. He's just waiting to have a word with Robert Wickens. We'll go down to that as soon as Robert is ready for us. But this is that age-old tactic in US-style racing of making your last pit stop first.
Exactly what you're doing is covering for that yellow.
Correct, exactly so. Sorry, Ryan, absolutely right. And in fact, Pfaff have come in. This only leads AO Racing in what has been called by other broadcasters the danger zone.
Yeah, that's the risk you run when you stay out. A yellow would cycle those that have already pitted to the lead when you inevitably have to make your stop at one point or another, probably under the ensuing yellow. So AO Racing willing to take that risk right now. We heard from Lauren Heinrich in our pre-race show, didn't we? And he talked about the fact that the car feels good. It just isn't going particularly fast here this weekend. And they thought they were going to have to find another way to get to the front. They've done that through strategy. Now it has to play out their way the rest of the way. We'll see if they've played their cards just right or not.
First 2 in LMP2 fighting their way through the battle for 2nd and 3rd. Mario Farnbacher in the blue-ish Lamborghini with Alec Udell in the blue and green Chevrolet Corvette, numbers 78 and 36, just coming down the hill now to Clayton Corner. The leaders have gone through, and they're having their own personal battle at the moment. In fact, 3rd place has gone through as well. Benjamin Pedersen in that very noticeable light blue PR1 machine. Dane Cameron now by 2.5 seconds from Tom Dillman, from Pedersen, from Tom Blomqvist. Top 4 separated by 5 seconds. Blomqvist seems to have recovered his pace now. Half a second behind Benjamin Pedersen. So whatever it was, whether it was just not getting the tyres up to temperature and pressure, or maybe just a fumble in traffic, and let's not forget these things can happen to the very best of drivers, but there seems to be no lasting issue, at least, Ryan, for that number 22 Tom Blomqvist driven United car.
Yeah, his pace does seem to have stabilized. He just ran a lap within 1/10 of a second of the race leader, Dane Cameron, but he's under pressure right now. Felipe Fraga has caught him, and Hunter McElroy is not too far behind either. So Tom does have his hands full here with 55 minutes to go.
And that battle for third place rages on in GTD. Cars with the green number backgrounds coming to the top of the hill at Quebec corner, with the aforementioned Tom Blomqvist just going past them at the moment, down the short straight before they plunge down into turn 4. Even in a road car, that is absolutely outstanding. Through Moss Corner, 5A and B, big crowd there. As always, the umbrella's been repurposed from earlier on to sunshades now. It's become a really lovely afternoon. Air temperature 30 Celsius, 86 Fahrenheit. And about the same on the track as well, as the leaders are closer than they have ever been. They do have a Corvette between them at the moment, but a good run on the start-finish straight by Dillman. And now there's nothing between them in terms of other traffic. They head over the brow to drop down through to turn 2. The purple Dragon leads the green and yellow fastest bakers in Europe to Europol, a bakery company. And their green and yellow colours have become so well known. It's pretty much now a classic livery. The Lamborghini from Pfaff Motorsports just holding them up for a moment. Andrea Caldarelli gives way, breathes out of the throttle, just goes offline by maybe half a car's width through turn 5. One of the real skills of being in not the top class is learning how to be overtaking as much as it is to be doing the overtaking. Got to do that without getting your tyres dirty, without getting off track, without putting yourself in the wall, and without costing yourself time. Still over 50 minutes to go here, Ryan. Still plenty to play out. And that was a good lap from Dane Cameron. A good lap means 9/10 of a second that he's just put into Tom Dillman. So in terms of what's been happening over the last 3 or 4 laps, that's breathing space, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the most he's had in several laps. Traffic had a part to play in that. I think Tom lost a lot of that ground when he just caught the traffic at the wrong place. We saw the leader, Cameron, able to get around the Lamborghini into Moss Corner, whereas Tom Dillman had to sit and wait through that corner. Didn't get the cleanest of runs, and that cost him a great deal. So we'll see if he can get back on his horse and start to reel them in. In GTD, did want to mention something real quick. You brought up the Alec Udell, Mario Farnbacher battle. Parker Thompson looks like he's up a position now around Udell, but that actually looks like a group that should cycle through to the lead of this race. The current leader, Trent Hidman, pitted with 1 hour and 17 minutes still on the clock. That was about 15 minutes before the group that's running 2nd, 3rd, and 4th right now. So that's one to keep an eye on. Without some yellow, and some significant yellow, I don't know that the 45 can make it to the checkered flag.
Let's set that as the next detective work for Arjuna Kankapati, who's down in the pit lane.
I wandered over to Rexy to catch up with Klaus Bachler, watching Lauren Heinrich behind the wheel. I know the car's felt okay. The pace hasn't necessarily been right at the front of the field, but strategies put you in a great spot right now.
Yeah, I think we knew we have not the pace to pass other cars here. I mean, qualifying was really good, but we had not the pace to be in front. So we had to change our plans. Team did, like always, a fantastic job, and yeah, we went full with strategy. I mean, now we're coming already into the pit line, so let's see where we are after this stop. But I'm sure the team will bring us out on P1 again, and then in 51 more minutes to go. Definitely not what we could expect after yesterday's qualifying to be in the position, but this is what we love about IMSA. I mean, you have always the chance to play with the strategy, and have always a chance to go up or come to the front, and yeah, let's see. Hopefully we can end up in the front.
Fuel only stopped. Do you think any of the competitors are going to stop again, or is it now a fight to the end?
No, I think everybody stopped already, so we were the last car, and it looks like, yeah, it looks like we are class leader still. So we had to stop now to be on the same strategy than the others. So yeah, I think everything is fine. That's it.
Thanks, Klaus.
Thank you.
Well, right on the spot there, Arjuna Kankapati. As that final stop was made, Lauren Heinrich back out. Number 77 car, they have played that strategic card absolutely perfectly. And they are already getting back up to speed. Enough VP racing fuel to get them to the end of the race. Looking to see how far back Nicky Katzberg is in that line.
John, I think Katzberg still owes a stop as well, because
It's showing, yeah, I agree.
Yeah, it's showing that he pitted with it most recently with 1 hour 17 minutes to go. Same for Albert Costa. So I think Caldarelli is really the one we need to be comparing him to.
Correct.
As the leader of those that stopped under, or stopped more recently, I guess, let's say. And so we'll have to see. I think Katzberg has come through to lead, but what the AO team did so well was by staying out, getting clear track, it allowed them to stay out there with clear track, and Heinrich was able to put in really fast laps. He had a gap of around 20 seconds on the class, and it was such a short pit stop with a relatively short transit time here at CTMP that's helped them consolidate some of that track position they were able to gain by virtue of running in clean air for a good chunk of time there.
Yeah, and they will, as we heard Lauren Heinrich say, they will be going to the end from here. In GTD, Wintilla Racing, Trent Hinman leads the class in the Dex Imaging Lamborghini, but they can't go to the end. They owe us a pit stop. He's been out 21 laps already, and you're absolutely right. It was the Andrea Caldarelli car that we had to be looking at, and by my reckoning, and more importantly, never mind my reckoning, by the reckoning of Al Kamel and the timing, Lauren was in the car, isn't he? Lauren Heinrich is ahead of Andrea Caldarelli in, at the moment, 3rd and 4th, but I reckon that's net 1st and 2nd. Of course, when Chevrolet Corvette Racing by Pratt Miller and Dragon Speed cars, when those two cars make their stop, unless, if all things stay equal, which as Paul Trustwell always says, they seldom do in sports car racing, unless they can get a break with some kind of neutralisation, intervention by a safety car, etc., etc. But even then, I don't think they've got quite enough lead to be able to turn those cars around with the fuel dump that they'll need. Their strategy now is slightly different, I think, Ryan, from what we've just seen from AO Racing in the 77 Porsche. I think those two, the Corvette and Dragon Speed, I think they'll go as far into the race as they can now, and they'll be looking for some help from circumstances rather than giving up this track position to try and fight their way through the field. I could be entirely wrong, but I think that's what they'll try and do now. Wintilla Racing and Trent Hinman leading GTD, right in amongst the GTD Pro battle, probably doing the same thing. Trent's probably got another 10 or 12 laps. In fact, they've all of those guys, Nicky Katzberg, Albert Costa and Trent Hinman, all got probably another 10 or 12 laps to go before they'll get a cough and a splutter, because they haven't got enough VP racing fuel in the tank. Still, the battle's going on in LMP2. We said we like this race because of what goes on, and Dane Cameron has pulled out a little bit of a lead, 2 seconds, but a great scrap going on between Tom Tillman and Benjamin Pedersen. We'll keep our eyes on that. Arjuna is down in the pit lane with an absolute star of that first stint, DXDT starting driver Robert Wiggins.
He's been so popular this weekend. I heard that his Wickens fan club had to reopen ticket sales 3 different times. But Robert, how good was it to be back in the car on Super Sunday?
It was awesome. You know, the formation lap was kind of surreal, seeing everyone cheering. You know, I think just for motorsport in general, but I'd like to think it was for me too. But it was, yeah, really, really enjoyable. Yeah, first stint went all right. A little hairy at the start, but we settled in and kind of undid the damage that I lost at the start. So, you know, we're doing all right. We're in good spot for hopefully a podium finish here at the end.
How's Alex doing behind the wheel? Has he said anything over the radio?
Yeah, Alex doing a great job. You know, I think there's a lot of different strategies at play right now, and there's still a lot of race left. You know, still 45 minutes, anything can happen.
We've only had 1 caution so far. Does that surprise you?
Yes and no. You know, they're all professionals, and you know, I think what you'll see later in the stint is the marbles, especially outside of turn 8, are getting pretty bad. Even in my stint before that yellow, it was pretty nasty there. I tried making a move around the outside of one of the Porsches, and yeah, got up into the marbles and lost the spot as a result, but I was able to claw it back later. It was, it's not easy. It's not easy to coexist with other classes, but that's the beauty of sports car racing.
And during that safety car period, John, the sweeper was out there cleaning up those marbles. So like Robbie points out, they'll be building up right again now, out on track.
As we get what these teams hope will be their final pit stops in LMP2, but I've got to tell you, Ryan Marine, 44 minutes left for the Tom Dillman-driven Indy Europol brand new set of Michelin tyres. They have absolutely brim-filled the tank with VP Racing fuel. That is pushing the envelope to go 45 minutes, certainly at full race speed, to the checkered flag from here.
Agreed, they'll need every drop of it. And it looks like a couple others are coming in this lap too. Everyone's right there around 40 minutes on their stint right here. So this is about when we expect folks to be diving in. But those that can make it a little bit further, 1 extra lap or 2 makes that fuel number that much more achievable.
Yeah, they had 3 yellow flag laps in that 30-lap stint that they have just pulled. And even at that point, they have only just done 40 minutes, even with 3 safety car laps slowing them down. I think they're going to need a splash or some further help. So let's see who goes furthest into the stint. And there's been an incident in the pit lane with, I think it was the number 52 PR1 Matheson Motorsport car, and one of their team members has been knocked over next to the pit wall. Let's hope they are all right as Pedersen rejoins, just about stays inside. And here comes the Indy Europol car right behind. That is a battle for position down through turn 2. They are side by side. The light blue car just out of the pits, not up the temperature and pressure on the Michelin tyres, and has to cede that position as in comes Dane Cameron, the race leader. 42.5 minutes when he came in. It'll be about another minute before he goes out again. This is still very, very tight indeed if they're going full rich. Arjuna Kangapati was watching that PR1 Matheson pit stop. I did see somebody on the ground down there. Arjuna, what's the story?
I ran over just to see the aftermath of it, and thumbs up from the team. I'm sure a little bit sore for that crew member, but at the very least, no major damage done as a course of that pit stop. LMP2 pit stops continuing. The number 2 is just fired off in front of me. They'll be a little bit better on fuel, John, and it's going to be very, very tight. Let's not forget, for some of these machines, 52's just rolled back down pit lane, John. I wonder if there's a penalty for them.
Exactly that. Leaving with equipment attached. That was the drive-through already being served. Meantime, at the front of the field, there has been a change in that pit stop cycle. Ryan Marine was watching it.
Yeah, the undercut worked for Tom Dillman and Inter-Europol. They were able to get out there on the hot tires, put in a couple of fast laps, and Dillman has come through to take the lead on their strategy. Now, we have to let it cycle through a little bit, but that looks really promising for last year's winners. Now, they have more fuel save to do, but, John, I think they can do it with some fuel save. I think that those that they pitted on that lap, they did it because that was the earliest part of their window. I don't think they had to be in just yet. As we've seen, others have been able to go beyond the 40-minute mark, and historically, this is a race where there tends to be a caution inside the final 30 minutes, and maybe that's in the back of their minds as well.
Back in for their final stop, Pietro Fittipaldi, Pratt Miller. Well, they're in good shape. That is spot on 40 minutes is their leave. Now, that's going to drop them down in terms of track position, but if everyone else is doing a bit of lift and coast, Pietro is 2 laps better than Inter-Europol, 3 laps better than some of the teams out there. Very interesting. I hear what you're saying. I'm not entirely convinced that we might be seeing some cars struggling in the last 2 laps around here. The issue is that it is an uphill run to the final checkered flag. Not quite as bad as it would be at somewhere like Road America, which is our next stop for the IMSA Championship season, WeatherTech SportsCar Championship season. We go from one fast track in beautiful green countryside to a fast track in beautiful green countryside. We'll have that all for you live in sound and vision, plus of course the manufacturer races as well. We'll welcome back the Ford Mustang Dark Horse Challenge after their absolutely fabulous run at the 24 Hours of Le Mans. Got a warning coming through, Ryan, here. Incident responsibility with the Windward Racing, number 57, for car 12. Now, 12's got the warning for the incident with the Windward car. It's partner Thompson. Not sure what happened there. But partner at the moment in 3rd position in GTD. Tell you what we'll do. We've got just under 40 minutes to go. Let's take an in-race update as that little flurry of pit stops has worked through. So in GTD, Trent Hindman rolling the dice with Wayne Taylor Racing, out front by a margin, but owes us his final pit stop. Everybody else I'm going to mention, we believe, is fueled to the end of the race, or very close to it. So second in GTD, Forte Racing's Lamborghini Huracan, Parker Thompson in 3rd for Vassar Sullivan Racing, Alec Udell for DXDT Corvette in 4th, 5th Phil Ellis for Windward Racing. They are the championship leaders. 6th, Roman De Angelis, back from his sojourn in the Heart of Racing Valkyrie, including at Le Mans. He's back on GT duty in the Vantage this weekend, and he is 6th in GTD Pro. Dragon Speed leading from Corvette Racing. Those two off strategy on everybody else. They cannot make it to the end, I don't think. I know that the Katzberg car did top off, but it's going to be over an hour and 15 minutes for that car to make it to the end. So again, they're going deep into the race. Let's see what they can do. 3rd place and pushing hard, fueled to the end, Lauren Heinrich in the AO Racing number 77. They worked the yellow flag to their benefit and got out ahead of Andrea Caldarelli for Pfaff Motorsports. They had gone long. Both of those cars had gone long early on, and the full course yellow came out at the right time for them. They've used that perfectly. Alexander Sims then in 5th for Chevrolet Corvette, and then the best of the BMWs. In fact, the 2 Paul Miller cars running 6th and 7th. The number 48, Max Hesse car, ahead of his teammate Madison Snow. And at the top of the timing screen, Inter-Europol by 2.5 seconds from AO Racing. Again, that changed on the pit stop sequence. Inter-Europol stopping earlier than the race-leading AO Racing Purple Dragon, Spike. and making that performance potential that they had count for them with 2 quick laps by the Frenchman Tom Dillman to take the lead of the race. It's another Tom Blomqvist in 3rd, but he's 8 seconds further back, 2.5 seconds between the top 2, 8 seconds further back to 3rd, and then just half a second back to 4th. TDS Racing Hunter McElrea, and then Philippe Fraga is another 5 seconds further back ahead of United Autosports, the number 2, by 3.5 seconds. Renger van der Zande making their last pit stop in the number 8 Tower Motorsports LMP2, which was delayed earlier on at 1.4 laps down. They've fought their way back to just on 3 laps down. Jerry Crouch, JDC Miller Motorsports Orica didn't start the race with some electrical gremlins, we believe, that was affecting the engine, and George Kurtz brought out the full course yellow with a very big incident coming out of turn 3 Quebec corner that ripped the left front of his CrowdStrike Racing by APR, and that car is the only official retirement. Now, don't forget, and this is to my 2 core commentators, we have the BDO Knows Strategy Award, 1 for P2 and 1 for the combined GT classes. I'm going to immediately throw in the guys at AO Racing because they worked it well. In LMP2, it's yet to be proved how this works out. It could be Corvette Racing as well if they've got it right in GT, but there can only be one GT winner from Pro or GT. I shall let both Ryan and Arjuna cogitate on that for a little while as we go down to the pit lane for some more driver reaction as we move towards the last half an hour of this enthralling contest.
There's a handful of Canadians racing, but also a couple of Canadians making their debut in the IMSA WeatherTech SportsCar Championship, and that includes Phil Fayer behind the wheel of the United Autosports number 2. Phil, big smile on your face. How special is it to be north of the border and making your debut in the big show?
It's a very special weekend. I'm grateful for United for the opportunity, for IMSA for allowing me to join. It's been 20 years almost since my last significant race. I'm having a great time.
In terms of a teammate as well, Ben Handley, so experienced in these LMP2 cars. I know you said you came in and tested here a few weeks ago, but I'm sure those conditions weren't exactly the same as this. How helpful has it been having Ben with you behind the wheel?
Well, you know, most sports are a very fast track where you just got to carry a lot of speed and you have to have a lot of confidence, so you have to test. And Ben is one of the best. You know, just someone who knows these cars so well. For someone who's like me that loves cars, loves racing, but hasn't been at it for so long, to have such a steady Eddie teammate that's able to help guide me of what to do, what I'm doing, and what the car should be telling me was instrumental.
We see usually in the Michelin Pilot Challenge, tested the LMP2 car at the end of last year at Daytona. How nice has it been to step up a little bit in terms of power and downforce?
You know, I'm having a great time with the Michelin. It's also a wonderful series, but these cars are very special. Like, you know, you throw them into the corner, has so much downforce, the car's hugging the ground, you feel so confident, and like I'm smiling through turn 1, 2, and 2 and 3. It's like you're smiling in the helmet. It's beautiful.
Smile from ear to ear. Enjoy this weekend. Hopefully we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you so much.
Good to hear from Phil Fayer making his debut, as Arjuna said. Thanks to Arjuna for the update. Plenty happening on track as well, with just a moment ago, Albert Costa putting a move on Nicky Katzberg for the lead as they run in GTD Pro, and right now a problem as a car goes spearing off. Lamborghini into the barrier. Is that the second place car in, yes it is, in GTD? Mario Farnbacher, who appeared set to inherit the lead in the class, somehow ends up in the tire barrier in turns 8 and 9. That is massive, and it looks like he could be stuck. This could be that full course yellow, and it is, that historically comes out in roughly the final 30 minutes of the races here at CTMP. All of the fuel mileage concerns gone in LMP2, and John, this is how it happened.
Oh my goodness me. Now, did he get a little touch from the TDS car? I think he did. I think it just caught the left-hand front wheel, and it may have broken the steering arm there because there did not seem to be any steering lock applied there. Cadence braking going on. Yeah, there was definitely a touch, and I think that's broken the steering arm. And that is huge news. Phil Ellis for Winwood Racing go into second position. Is their BD or Nose Strategy Award, is that coming their way? Because they have played a blinder on this. And that left front wheel is not doing what the driver wanted it to do. He's trying to keep it out the wall. And this is huge news for Dragon Speed and for Corvette Racing in GTD Pro, because they came in with about an hour and 17 minutes to go. It's a lot to ask, but because of the pace around here, Ryan, safety car laps are real bonus for fuel saving, because normally you're flat out so much of the time. It's going to take time because it's a very slow lap compared to a standard racing lap, and you use so much less fuel. Hunter McElrea then fighting the TDS car back up to fourth, and that incident, unsurprisingly, is under review. It's a game of inches here, Ryan Marine, and unfortunately Forte Racing and the Lamborghini crew came out on the wrong side of it.
Wow. Well, we talked about it at the top, didn't we? That how these classes interact could be massive. Farnbacher has been pulled out of that tire bundle.
Oh, wow.
Actually, that car has made its way back to the pit lane. And they're going to have to do some work to it. It's probably done, but the damage doesn't look nearly as bad as you might have thought with as fast as he went into that tire wall. As you say, that incident is under review. As far as how this affects GTD Pro, I really struggle to see how Costa and Katzberg can go the better part of 80 minutes on a tank of fuel, but maybe this is what they need. We'll see. It certainly helps them get closer to that. As I said earlier, as far as the LMP2 class is concerned, this alleviates any fuel concern there. How about for Trent Hinman? That's the other car we got to keep an eye on. They pitted last win. How close were they? They pitted with an hour and 17 minutes left. So they're basically in the same position as the GTD Pro leaders, where this helps, but it might not be enough.
Well, the 78 car came into a closed pit, but if this is fixing something that is safety related, that would count as emergency service. I'd put 5 seconds of fuel in, because you're allowed that as well. That would alleviate any problems that they might have had to go to the end. And I think it's the bodywork that's been the problem. Arjuna is down there. The guys are trying to get this car back out. They've lost a lap. This would count as emergency service, I think, Arjuna.
I think you are right, but the issue they have right now, John, is they've got the left front wheel off the car. The front clip isn't being detached, and so the mechanic actually got the force out. He started kicking the front to try and dislodge it, but let's see if they're going to be able to do that. The left side number board is actually almost peeling off the car as well, so all the damage isolated to the left-hand side. They actually haven't ended up changing the front of the car, just pushing it forward a bit, maybe trying to avoid any sort of a tire rub, but they are getting ready to drop it off the air jacks and potentially send it once they get the tape on the front end, just to make it a bit more aerodynamic.
I think they've still got the yellow block underneath the jack on the left front there. That's not going anywhere soon. The IMSA officials are making sure that car is safe to go back out again. Whatever happens now, they are out of contention, and they were most certainly, Ryan Marine, in contention in GTD, with Trent Hinman more than marginal on fuel in the other Lamborghini, the one from Wayne Taylor Racing, the silver number 45 car. That car now has been, well, this is a free kick really for anybody who is marginal on fuel. It's still not going to be easy for those who pitted with an hour and 17 to go in the GT categories, but my goodness me, this is going to help them.
It does. It gets them closer. Now it comes down to how much fuel were they able to save before this. Was that even what they were thinking, or were they thinking about pushing hard and just doing a top off late in the going anyway. We'll see how that plays out, but you have to feel for the Forte guys. Farnbacher and Goikberg have not had a great season outside of one 5th place result at Laguna Seca. Their best finish, 3 12th places, and they were in a position, it looked like, to at the very least get a podium, if not win this race, had it stayed green, because I agree, if it was green the rest of the way, there's no way Hinman could have made it. Now, Mario was under a lot of pressure from Phil Ellis, who has been carving through the GTD field as of late, but I still think this was a car that was on for a great result had this not gone wrong by just the narrowest of margins.
There's clearly something the matter with the left front wheel. Whether it was jammed, whether something got bent, the car was kicked sideways, but Mario was clearly trying, you could see him behind the wheel, trying to turn the car to the right, and the car just wasn't going. And then they've had that wheel off, they've kicked a couple of bits and pieces around the front, as described by Arjuna Kankapadi. It was not the most elegant, and a bit of engineering work that could go on. Well, okay. Now, what's going to hurt Trent Hinman here is the new rule for GTD Pro and GTD. Had it been the old way, he would have had 7 GTD Pro cars between himself and Phil Ellis. Now they'll reset the field, and he will be the car in front of Phil Ellis. If he's still having to save fuel, he may not have the performance to hold what is already a quick car and driver combination back.
Very true. I'm not sure that this was necessarily a strategy play to win the race. This is a car that was down the order a little bit, had some issues early in the going. A drive-through penalty, if I remember correctly. Danny Formal, didn't he have contact with Onofrio Triarsi really early in the going? So maybe this was just a play to get them some track position. Not necessarily the outright win. Of course, they'd take it if they could get it, but yeah, he's definitely on the back foot if they are going to try to go the distance here, and you're spot on. That rule change, which allows all the GTD Pro cars through and takes that buffer away, really is going to leave him vulnerable here on the restart. Trent's going to have his hands full.
You know, fair play to IMSA. They waited to see if Mario was going to get that car out. It was clearly buried and needed a little bit of assistance. And also, they have just opened the pits, and whilst they are going through this sequence, the formalities, the sweepers are back out on the track again, so they're expecting some side-by-side racing at that part of the circuit. We have got some takers. Vassar Sullivan in the pro car, Ben Parnigan's in, Mike Rockenfeller's in. Now, smoke them if you've got them, guys. New tyres, Arjuna, coming out for all of the cars that have come into the pit lane. Have they learned from Turner Motorsport from yesterday?
I think what they are also doing, John, though, is going with scrub tyres as opposed to stickers. Remember, we were talking with some of the drivers about that earlier today. A great sequence from the 64 and the 65. They beat the 14 Vassar Sullivan Lexus out as the AWA 13 and Wright Motorsport 120, the two takers in the GTD class.
Okay, so no final wave by required, but we do have to do the class splits. So all of the GTD Pro cars will go ahead of Trent Hinman. And now, who's that? That's the Gradient car, who's a lap down, I think, with Robert McGuinness behind the wheel. Yes, he is. So he'll need to stay in behind what is effectively his class leader. So sadly for him, he doesn't get his lap back. Yeah. Remember,
this is
that number 45 car.
Right.
You were spot on, well remembered, Ryan. Spun around, facing the wrong direction, hit on a Onofrio Triarsi, got a drive through, now leads the race. But I'm still not sure that that car can go to the end, even with a bit of yellow. It would be extraordinary if it can go an hour and 17 minutes. Just going to depend how long this particular yellow flag is. And see above comment, by the way, for Albert Costa for Dragon Speed and for Nicky Katzberg. They're now at the front of the field, but they've got cars fueled and able to go full rich all the way to the end. And coming through now, how about Mike Rockenfeller, Chris Meese and Ben Barnicott, not only fueled to the end and therefore turned up to 11 in terms of the engine map, but also with at least new left side tyres or replacement left side tyres for the last 20 minutes or thereabout. And we saw yesterday in the Pilot Challenge race, did we not, Ryan, what a bit of additional grip can do for you around this circuit?
We did indeed. Yeah, Turner used that to their advantage and had a really strong run to the checkered flag. Whether or not these teams were watching that yesterday, I'd like to think they were, but perhaps they came up with this on their own initiative as well. And look, if you don't have track position, no harm in rolling the dice a little bit. It's not really a roll of the dice, is it? I think the Burnham, if you've got them, is spot on. You've got the tires sitting there, even if they are scrubs. Maybe it's a set that was used briefly in one of those qualifying sequences. Doesn't have a lot of laps on it, and the scrub tires should get you up to speed pretty quickly here on the restart. So that should be absolutely fascinating to watch. One quick storyline to cover off that I haven't had a chance to yet. In the LMP2 pit stop sequence, which happened about 25 minutes ago, Felipe Fraga lost quite a bit of ground, and I went and did some digging. They spent about 6 to 8 seconds longer in the pit lane than a lot of their competition, and I think that cost them at least 1, if not 2 positions on track. And so maybe that was another rear deck lid change that they undertook, but at any rate, that's one of the reasons they lost some ground.
Arjuna's watching that. There was certainly one rear deck change, wasn't there, Arjuna?
Yes, and I think that was the stop that maybe they lost the most amount of time in, and maybe I got myself a bit confused with Ryan spotting that second 6 to 8 second loss down on pit lane.
Yeah, it's been busy for everybody down on the pit lane. Thanks very much indeed to all of our volunteer marshals, track services, recovery, the AMR safety crew. I know you're listening in on XM 206, sorry, Sirius 206 this weekend, or on 90.7 FM. Ladies and gentlemen, we salute you all. All of our volunteers make racing work. We absolutely cannot go racing without you. Quick word from down in the pit lane, and Arjuna Kangapati.
Ryan has quite correctly been talking about the frequency of late race cautions here at the Canadian Tire Motorsports Park. John, 3 of the past 7 races at CTMP have ended under caution, and now 5 of the last 6 have seen a race restart inside of the last 20 minutes. So what do we always say? Cautions breed cautions. I think this is going to be a crazy restart for all those out in the car.
You are just joining us wherever you are in the world, and I accept that on a Sunday evening on a very busy motorsport weekend, it's now 10:30 in Europe, Central European summertime, with a hot weekend there, weather-wise, coming up to 9:30 in the UK. But my goodness, if you are just joining us now, first of all, where have you been all weekend? We've had some cracking races yesterday and today from Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, but they're all available on the archive at IMSARadio.com and on IMSA's official YouTube channel as well. They'll be going up in the next few days there for the World TV feed. But you might have just timed this perfectly well. Get yourself some snacks, possibly a beverage or two, and settle in. As our stock car friends might say, just pull those belts down a little bit tighter. We're about to go racing for the last 17 minutes. How much green flag racing will we get? Who has got the performance? Where is the tyre performance? Who's got the most VP racing fuel? It's all to play for in all 3 classes. Tom Dillman goes back the line and gets a great restart, jumps away to a half-second lead, and the green and yellow Inter-Europol competition machine is gone. Further behind, there's people off on the grass in there. That was one of the BMWs, the Paul Miller racing car. And that has dropped at least a couple or three places. Albert Costa got a good restart with Nicky Katzberg in behind him. Dragon Speed and Corvette. Trent Hinman holds off Phil Ellis for the moment in that battle at the front of GTD. But remember, the two leaders that restarted 1 and 2 in GTD Pro and the leader in GTD are still under a bit of a question mark in terms of their fuel and how quickly they can go to the end. They may be able to make it, but can they make it at top speed? Absolutely unbelievable. Back to green flag racing. Coming down to the last 15 minutes, and here comes the penalty that we expected. It is the number 11, Holden McElrain, clipping the Forte Lamborghini. That will be a drive-through. That 78 car will get a stop and 10-second improperly served emergency service, but they are well down the field, having lost some laps. And also a penalty for Mike Rockenfeller. Another penalty for Ford Multimatic. That was a tyre left unattended without their crew. And the leader's in the wall. The leader's in the wall. I don't believe it. The door's open. It's over for Tom Dillman and into Europol. 15 minutes to go. We're back under full course yellow, and it's turn 3 at the top of the hill has claimed another victim, and it looks like exactly the same accident that George Kurtz had earlier on. He's gone in, he's understeered off at the exit of turn 3, I believe, and that is another big incident. Right, incredible. EMR safety crew already on the scene there. The Frenchman Tom Dillman with the door open. Looked like he was trying to extricate himself there, but that car buried left front, suspension damage, a mirror image of what we'd seen, or should I say the exact same damage that we saw earlier on. Now, he was pushing very hard on the restart. He had it very good. Oh, he's just has he got a puncture? That was really weird. Really weird. It looked like the right front locked up. He was a little bit closer to the apex of the corner, and the safety crew are talking to Tom Dillman whilst that's happening. And before anything happens with opening of pits, let's do our final VP in race update. Behind the safety car with just under 14 minutes to go, it's Dane Cameron for AO Racing. Spike the Dragon back at the front after the incident for the erstwhile leader Tom Dillman in the number 43 into Europol car. He's being attended to now, as is the car, by the EMR safety crew. Hunter McElray now in third for TDS, Felipe Fraga for Riley, Ben Hanley for United, the number 2 car. Something very odd went on there with the right front of that car. I know it went in left front first, but it looked to me as though the right front had locked up, or perhaps there was a suspension issue on that car as he turned in. There was something not right on that car, an uncharacteristic mistake if it was one. So we're waiting to hear from the safety team. They're making sure he's all right before they take him out of the car. In GTD Pro, it's Dragon Speed from Corvette, from AO Racing, first, second and third, 81, 4 and 77. So that is Ferrari, Chevrolet, Corvette, then Porsche, then the second Chevy, that's Alexander Sims in the number 3, then the Lamborghini Huracan of Pfaff Motorsport, then BMW, Madison Snow, that's your top 6. Trent Hinman has the Lamborghini from Wayne Taylor Racing, which might be on fumes by the end of this. From Phil Ellis, the Winward Racing, looking to extend their championship lead. Vassar Sullivan in third for Parker Thompson, then DXDT, Corvette just off the podium, Harter Racing Vantage in 5th, and Fred Schandorf in 6th for Inception, also leading the bronze class. That's your VP in race update with 11.5 minutes to go. Let's go down to Arjuna. He's been asking some of the teams about what this does to their strategy, and mainly need to know what's going on at the head of the GTD field. To be honest, GTD and GTD Pro, Arjuna, what's the story?
Just had a catch up with Tommy Milner in that Pratt & Miller Corvette lineup. Of course, a team and manufacturer that have had so much success here in the past. They're good to the end, whether or not this caution had come out. And my suspicion is, John, Dragon Speed are probably feeling somewhat comfortable as well. We'll have to wait and see if we do end up getting a restart with just 11 minutes left on this clock. But I can tell you the team down here watching the screens very anxiously right now, and I'm sure monitoring the fuel level.
In that VP in-race update, Ryan Marine, the significant change there was Phil Ellis in second place for Winward Racing. That's happened, I think, just before we went yellow, and we thought that might be net first place, but Trent Hinman, he's on the same fuel strategy as the Dragon Speed and the Corvette cars in the Pro category, but nevertheless, this will be a good result for Winward if it stays like this.
Yes, and that's just what they do, even on days when it doesn't look like they're the outright fastest car, although that really wouldn't be today because Phil Ellis does have the fastest lap in class. But even on weekends where they struggle, they somehow find themselves in the top 5 or better. And they did things a little unconventionally. They elected to stay out at one point when most of the other front runners pitted. But it's worked for them, in part because of Philip Ellis's pace. And it really looked like if this race had stayed green to the checkered flag, that they were in a great spot to get a potential win. Right now, this yellow should help Trent Hinman significantly to make it, as you said, John, he's on the same strategy as the front two in GTD Pro. So if Katzberg's good to go in the 4, as we heard Arjuna say, Tommy Milner said they were, that should mean Trent Hinman is also good to go. They pitted on the same lap. Albert Costa pitted one lap later, or excuse me, earlier than those two, so would have one further lap to go. But I think, having had a 15-minute yellow already, just 2 minutes of green since the restart, and then however long this yellow is, that should put them in a window to make it to the end. And it took some luck, but that said, they should be in pretty good shape.
Now, I'm hearing that Tom Dillman has been extracted very carefully from the Inter-Europol Orica. The MR safety team, best in the biz, taking their time, making sure he's stabilised. There was a thumbs up from the Frenchman as he came out. Such a shame to end the race like that. Did look like there might have been a problem on the car. We'll find that out later. The best news is that Tom is now out of the car. He's needed some assistance for that. We'll get an official update when we can. I don't want you to think we're ignoring what's going on there, but we don't have any solid information, and therefore we can only tell you what the situation is as the field goes by the scene of that accident. It did look as though the right front wheel was up in the air, or maybe there was a problem at the left rear, maybe, but we don't know. They're all maybes for right now. The good news is Tom Dillman has been extracted by the safety team, and we'll get an update as soon as that becomes available. They were in line for the BDO No Strategy Award because they did that undercut, Ryan Marine, and got them to the front of the race. That might still be a contender because that was absolutely superb. That gave them the lead of the race in LMP2. Has anything else caught your eye strategy-wise in the LMP2 field that might be worthy of the BDO No Strategy Award?
Well, one candidate would probably be TDS Racing, and a little wind is out of that sail because they've got a penalty they still need to serve. That's something that happened quite a while ago now, but they were adjudged to have been at fault for some contact that brought out the previous yellow, with Hunter McElrea getting just barely into Mario Farnbacher and sending Mario into the wall. But they had the penalty very early in the race for contact when Stephen Thomas was driving, and they went off strategy early on. They pitted just after 20 minutes elapsed, and they were able to use that then to get themselves back into position when another yellow came out a little bit later on. So that would be one that I would think of that took a car that was completely out of the running and put them in top 3 contention. But again, that kind of disappears here with the penalty that McElrea still needs to serve.
Well, yes. Does it? It was still a great strategic move that put them back into it. They might not get the result at the end of the day. That's why I still think Inter-Europol in with a shout as well. You get a vote on this as well, Arjuna. LMP2, BDO Nose Strategy Award. It might not have given a top 3 position for anybody, but who's caught your eye in terms of who have played the strategic cards the best in LMP2?
So I'm usually quite boring with my picks, John, and they end up going towards the winner, which is not the norm. Today, I'm going to go with the ERA Motorsports crew, that call to almost self-penalize themselves, not risk a penalty for coming into a closed pit lane and taking service, and the heads-up awareness to wave driver Travis Hill back down the lane. I think that was really great to see the heads-up driving. Let's not forget, 2 drivers who aren't necessarily always week in and week out in that car.
Yeah. Fine, the number 18 like that. GTD and GTD Pro, we've got time, 5 minutes to go, still behind the safety car. Has to be a question mark whether we'll go back to green here. So we will use this time to debate the BDO No Strategy Award for the GTD class as a whole. You've got to throw in Dragon Speed and Corvette, but EO Racing haven't done much wrong in 3rd in GT Pro. Wayne Taylor Racing, Winward Racing, they've both in their own ways played the strategic cards to get themselves where they are as well. Ryan, what's caught your eye in GTD for the BDO Nose Strategy Award?
Those are the standouts, definitely, and I suppose if you're looking for a differentiator, it might just be that Dragon Speed pulled the pin on that earlier than everybody else. They're now an hour and 15 minutes into this stint. They pitted 1 lap before Katzberg and 1 lap before Hinman, so that really was risky business by them trying to make that work, and they've needed the yellows to fall their way, but they've looked at the trends, and as we've talked about a few times, this race typically does have yellows late. As Arjuna pointed out, it tends to end under yellow, and that could very well be the case here today. And the fact that they go from a car that was absolutely at the back of the GTD Pro field at the first hour of this race, they were getting passed by the front runners in GTD, in fact, to go from that to the front with a big-time gamble and maybe win this thing. They still have to nurse it home here, and that's not a sure thing yet, but that's probably where I would lean.
Arjuna, GT Pro, GTD Pro and GTD, BDO No Strategy Awards.
I think Ryan makes a good case for Dragon Speed, who haven't necessarily been at the front of the timesheets in the GTD Pro class. I think in terms of GTD, I mean, Russell Ward kept his cards close to his chest when I was having my chat with him. Couldn't extract the secrets in that particular conversation. But for a championship-leading team, John, to make a decision and then be followed on strategy by someone like Turner Motorsports, who have their own success of good track record and strategy calls here at the Canadian Tire Motorsports Park, it's really a toss-up, I think, between Dragon Speed and Winward Racing, but maybe Dragon Speed gets it just because of the struggle I think this weekend has been overall for them.
Well, I think then with 2.5 minutes to go, we've got a consensus at least on the BDO Nose Strategy Award for the combined GTD classes, and that is going the way of Dragon Speed and the Ferrari for all the reasons you've just heard from my 2 co-commentators. I'm going to side. We've had some very good nominations. I kind of want to give it to the Inter-Europol guys for that undercut that got them to the front of the field, even though they have ended in the barriers. That was a potential race-winning move for those guys as we're on the final circuit at the moment. Does it disqualify them, gentlemen? I'll go with you. Does it disqualify them that they aren't running at the end of the race? Ryan, what do you think?
No, I don't think so. I think that it was a gamble because they were going to be in a bigger fuel save than everybody else, but they turned
Correct.
Tom Dillman loose for a couple of flyers there with clear track, and he absolutely executed. I think you have to look there.
Scant consolation with a race win within their sights, but there we are then, the BD or No Strategy Award for Prototype going to Inter Europol for that early and brave call that brought them in for the fuel stop a couple of laps before everybody else, and that's, as many people will call it, the undercut. Gave them the lead of the race, which they did not relinquish until, sadly, Tom Dillman went into the wall. And just looking back at that replay again, there may have been an element of mechanical issue with that car. The back wheels were certainly still spinning as the car hit the wall, so something not right with that car. Good to know that Tom was talking to the EMR safety team and gave a thumbs up to the fans as he's been taken to the medical centre very carefully after a high G impact. An unsatisfactory end from that point of view to what has been an enthralling Chevrolet Grand Prix for the IMSA WeatherTech SportsCar Championship. Our thoughts with Tom Dillman, and hopefully he is okay. We'll get word from the team as soon as possible. We'll be reporting on that on Midweek Motorsport on RS1 on Wednesday. Coming to a checkered flag effectively behind the safety cars. TDS racing car has not been able to serve its drive-through, so that will be converted into a time penalty. But it's AO Racing who win it, and it's, I think, maybe that is just reward for that brilliant opening drive by PJ Hyatt. Tom Blomqvist in second. It'll be Felipe Fraga for Riley who come through into third with the time penalty applied to the TDS car. That's already happened on the timing screen. Thank you to Al Kamel. Dragon Speed and the Ferrari from Corvette from AO Racing in third position. All had their moments at the front of the field. Wayne Taylor Racing take a victory in the Lamborghini Huracan with their big gamble on fuel, and Winward Racing extend their championship lead in second with Vassar Sullivan Racing in third. Brilliant stuff from the guys at the sharp end. Albert Costa finished it off. It was Giacomo Altoe who started it, and he's down with Arjuna on the pit wall.
Celebrating is Dragon Speed, victorious here at the Canadian Tire Motorsports Park. Hugs all around for the team, but I've got to ask the question to driver Giacomo Altoe about just how close it was in terms of the fuel. Giacomo, were you worried in that last hour that the cautions wouldn't drop in your favor?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, sometimes you need some luck. Obviously, it's not the way we want to win like that under yellow, but we will take it, and good points for the championship. So I'm so happy for the team and for us.
And this is what you need to do to put yourself in contention for championships, right? Even when the pace isn't necessarily all there, get the strategy right and put yourself at the front.
Exactly. This was the strategy for today. It worked out, so mega.
Congratulations. Enjoy this one.
We'll try and get words with some of the other winning teams as well. Arjuna will be making his way through. We're hearing that Tom Dillman was walking and talking and acknowledging the fans in the best hands with the EMR safety team, and the cleanup continues over there as the slowdown lap comes. Let's speak to the man who started off. I don't know what he had for breakfast. I said that in commentary earlier on, but pulled out more than a 20-second lead, Arjuna. PJ Hyatt, one of the stars of the show today. Dane Cameron finishing it off for AO Racing.
PJ, what did you have for breakfast that made you fly so quickly in that first into the race?
I woke up on the right side of bed this morning, I suppose, but I absolutely love this racetrack, and driving a P2 around here is such a phenomenal experience. I don't know, it just, yeah, when you're sort of in the zone, you're just in the zone. I was actually having the time of my life driving out there today. It was really fun.
I mentioned this yesterday, 6 pole positions in 11 now attempts at qualifying in this LMP2 car. You finally got your first win, though, in the IMSA WeatherTech SportsCar Championship. The last month's been pretty good, though, for you and for the team. How are you feeling right now?
Yeah, well, I'd say, you know, when you get on pole and you don't convert it into a win, it's a tough lesson to learn, and so we've learned a lot of those lessons over the years, and to be able to pull away with a win today it's sort of this magical moment for the team, for everybody that works so hard, for the times we don't get on the podium. You know, it all makes it worthwhile. So yeah, you got to savor these for sure.
Kind of an oddball question. I'm a software engineer by day. There does seem to be something about software engineers in motorsport. Is there something about being able to break down the problem from big to small that helps you behind the wheel of the car?
I don't think people quite understand how much data is going on behind the scenes. There's tons of engineering. You know, you're looking at a lot of squiggle lines trying to figure out how to make these cars go faster. And so there's a lot of computers behind these things. So I think it's not just all macho stuff out there banging into cars and each other and all that stuff. Like, there's a lot of science and data that goes on that I do think having that software background does help some from time to time.
Spike powered by engineering, not by rage, it turns out, John.
Exactly. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah, very good. Nice job interview there. Pitching. I'm not sure whether he's pitching for a job as an IT engineer or a driver on that one. Arjuna, thanks. Stay with us for post-race tech. We'll try and grab someone from Wayne Taylor Racing and the Lamborghini as well. Ryan Marine, the Dane Cameron driven Spike the Dragon in the pit lane. Dane, without a drive, it would seem, at the end of last year. He's found a new home with AO. He's been to Le Mans, he's won there. He's winning here this weekend. That's been a great hire from Gunnar Jeanette and PJ Hyatt. But you've got to say, what a drive from PJ early on there, against his peers, against the other bronze drivers who are all absolutely outstanding. And he was on another level today.
He was. He set the table, didn't he? I think he lapped up to 6th place at one point in this race. And PJ Hyatt was really flying, but Dane Cameron has been such a great addition, and I think he deserves some credit for the form we've seen out of PJ around the globe, whether it's at Le Mans, European Le Mans Series, or here at IMSA. Dane brings so much experience to the table and seems to really be relishing this role alongside PJ.
Before we hand the PA and 90.7 back to the track and we round up our World Feed TV. Remember, we've got Michelin post-race tech to come. Hashtag Michelin PRT at IMSA Radio. That's on RS2 exclusively. Unofficially, the results then see AO Racing bring it home from United Autosports and Riley in a classic scrap at the front of the field. All right, interrupted by a couple of safety cars and closed up by that, but we was having a good race before that as well. United Autosports are just off the podium with the number 2 car in 4th place from PR1 Matheson, Pratt Miller Motorsports, ERA in 7th, TDS Racing in 8th, and Tower Racing, Tower Motorsports down a few laps in 9th. The best of the GTD pros playing the fuel card. Spike the Dragon win, Dragon Speed win, and oh no, not quite got AO in the other GT class, but the Ferrari wins for the first time in Dragon Speed colours. Corvette Racing doing what Corvette do around here. They've been so successful here down through the years, on the podium again, with AO Racing in 3rd position for Lauren Heinrich, refiring their championship challenge ahead of Corvette number 4, Pfaff Motorsports in the Lamborghini, Paul Miller Racing, and then the Ford Multimatic of Chris Meese and the 65 crew. Then Ben Barnicat in the Vassar Sullivan 14 crew. Paul Miller's number 48 in 9th. Mike Rockefeller with a late race penalty dropping back down to 10th. And in 20th position overall and winning another first time top step standing crew for Wayne Taylor Racing, Lamborghini Huracan. That's Wayne Taylor's best result of the season in any class. Something for Wayne, hopefully, to be a little bit more happy about there. The 45 car taking it from the championship lead as they increase their championship lead. Phil Ellis and Russell Ward for Winward Racing. Vassar Sullivan in third. DXDT, another great race for Rob Wickens and Alec Udell. They're just off the podium in fourth. Harter Racing Aston in fifth. Inception in sixth. Seventh for Kenton Cook and the rest of Triazi after a very difficult race for them. Robbie Foley brought home the Turner Motorsport 96 car in 8th, AWA in 9th, Wright Motorsport in 10th, and beyond that, Conquest Racing and Robert McGuinness for Gradient. We lost Tom Dillman, of course, with that late accident. Mario Farnbacher also had problems, but he's classified in 13th position. George Kurtz, CrowdStrike, went off as well, and Jerry Kraut did not start the race in the car that he shares with Scott Andrews for JDC Miller Motorsports. Let's quickly wrap up a couple of bits and pieces. There was that late race penalty for the TDS car that dropped them down. Hunter McElrea then finishing in 8th position. Stay tuned on RS2 as we wrap up the race. We'll take your questions and your thoughts. Points are rising. What a fantastic race weekend we've had. Saturday was super. Sunday was even better. Brilliant stuff from all of the IMSA categories. Thanks to all our technical team at the track at Concord, North Carolina. NASCAR productions team once again giving us some fantastic images to work with on radio and on the world feed. And Tim Gray, who's been pressing all kinds of buttons, some even at the same time as he was in two places at one time. Thank you, Tim. Really sterling work from everybody this weekend. Make sure you're on RS2 for Michelin Post-Race Tech. We'll reconvene in a couple of weeks' time at America's National Park of Speed. We're back in the green and pleasant land with a natural terrain road circuit, just a little bit longer than this one. It's Road America next for IMSA and IMSA Radio and IMSA TV. For Ryan Marine and Arjuna Kankaparty, I'm John Hindhoff. For now, it's goodbye from the 4Performance Global Broadcast Centre. It's Michelin Post-Race Tech next on RS2.